Hello, What? I don't know if you can hear me. If you can, we maybe have had a bad HDMI cable take out the capture card, but we live here in a sea of HDMI cables, so Matt's currently on his way to fix it. We'll be on soon. Okay, technical issue solved very soon. Hello, everybody. All right, technical issues are over. We are here. It is time for the live World of Warcraft news. Finally. And there's actually some pretty damn good things, I think, to talk about this time.
Should be absolutely, fun. Yep.
So, yeah, we had a dead HDMI cable. Like, you know that telltale, like, green artifacting you get when your HDMI is, like, a bit busted? That was hitting the pass-through, which would have ruined the show. And it only started playing up 30 seconds before start, maybe a minute before start.
So just the curse of tech stuff, like.
Yeah. Let's see. Joel says he has no audio, but other people don't seem to say so. So we're probably okay. Maybe.
Yes. Everything seems fine on our side. So good.
Yeah, we'll probably probably hang out here for like a minute or two before we actually get into the show proper.
Yes.
And for that, we actually have a viewer question for our pre-show.
Hit me.
Look at that. We've got content in the pre-show. Can you fucking imagine? All right, so one of the viewers, before we started, asked, do you recommend World of Warcraft to new players in 2021? We can take it generic, and then the context is he likes League of Legends and likes PvP. So it's basically, right now, can you recommend World of Warcraft? That is the overall question. And a spicy one to open the show with.
If you like League of Legends and PvP, then there is definitely potential for it to be a great, like, regular game for you. Because that is what, like, there's so much audience overlap between that kind of, not quite mono gamer, but close to that. Because the level of depth in PvP can be astounding. It can just be a little awkward to get to that point.
Yes.
There is definitely a massive amount of, like, how many, 15, 16 years of knowledge in the background. It'll take a while to pick some of that up. But the PvP scene is honestly, like, if that's what you're going in for, yeah, absolutely go for it. And Shadowlands is a pretty, like, I wouldn't have said this maybe 2-3 expansions ago, but now Shadowlands, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I would have in no way said play World of Warcraft for PvP in I think a few recent expansions, mainly in BFA, because I think like the gearing and so many of the things that would motivate you to do PvP are like broken and a bit borked. I would totally say it for World of Warcraft right now, though. And that's especially, I mean, I'm not even a mainline PvPer, like, not at all. But there's a PvP Honor Talent rework coming in 9.1. That's vaguely exciting to me. Because, like, you know, playing a Marksmanship Hunter, I got into, like, a few battlegrounds. And suddenly I was like, oh, there's more class customization for me to do. There's all of these actually pretty cool abilities for me to use. Right? Like, you know, you can binding shot somebody and give him a basilisk or whatever. It's, well, I think is the basilisk going, it doesn't matter. But, yeah, that side's actually pretty sweet. Now, it obviously does have a large issue, which, I mean, if you're a League of Legends player, it's not like you're used to getting new maps every day. But, of course, I think for a game like World of Warcraft, it's going to need more maps. So if you're joining World of Warcraft for PvP, I mean, you're going to have, you know, in the case of a new person, they're not tired of any of the maps that exist currently for Battlegrounds and stuff. So they're going to be able to come in and basically just have a great time with all that content. For existing people, I mean, we're just kind of sitting there being like, yep, give us more, please. So it's funny. Yes, Connor Hatham, that was it. So I totally say if you like things like League and you like all of that, yeah, PvP's good. And what's nice now is, for a lot of it, you can just PvP, get a bunch of your gear via PvP, and that's that. You know, like the PvP gear is often the gear that has verse. That's the stat that you need. It could be even better for PvPers, though, in the near future if Blizzard are actually considering a Warlords of Draenor-like scaling system. That would mean that PvP gear is PvP gear. Like, it just gets an eye level boost in PvP. That is something that they said they're considering. So, for somebody like that, I'm going to say yes. I guess to take that question, though, of is it worth getting into World of Warcraft in 2021, out to a more broad perspective, I think that's where it gets interesting. If we're going to talk about somebody who thinks they would like collection gameplay and just that side, or maybe role playing, then yeah, 100%. World of Warcraft, it's still World of Warcraft. All of that old content still exists. You can do it for your collection gameplay. You can get all your mounts. And if you're going into the game for the first time, unlike all of us who have unlocked everything over the past, you actually will have a bunch to do. Like, you know, it's a pity there's not a way to, like, I suppose, no, could you, I'm wondering if you, like, Party Sync or something would scale up the Legion Order Hall campaigns. But, like, for a new player, they can just go do their Legion Order Hall campaigns, and you're like, yeah, that's a whole bunch of content. Do your Suramar, do all of that. So I guess then the other side is the likes of, you know, Mythic Plus and that type of gameplay. Is this a good time if you're into that sort of thing?
It almost certainly... it's interesting because a new player actually understanding the flow of Mythic Plus and how dungeons play, I think there's a decent amount of like required reading there almost, but it's not quite as easy to just hop into a game as it is in anything other that's like matchmaking based. But if you aren't shackled by any of the reasons that like old World of Warcraft players are maybe less engaged with some of how the modern game's playing out, you can actually just go and play Mythic Plus. There is a very defined bit of game that if you're going to play that like you would something like League, or if you're, I mean, even like CSGO, any of those games where that's what people do, if you go into that like for Mythic Plus, it is almost certainly a good time. There's the slight caveat that we're in the middle of Season 1, but given Valor's been added, I don't think that's a problem either.
Yeah.
It's a case where I actually think that for those players across PvP and M+, outside of the barrier to entry, which might feel a little bit big, but is actually a lot smaller than you would imagine because you can catch up to the important parts quick, it's actually pretty much great.
Yeah. It's, you know, it's funny. It's like that weird thing of so many of us feel old and crusty and jaded, but you kind of look at it and it's like for a totally fresh new player, yeah, stuff would be pretty good. Like the leveling right now is pretty sweet. We both leveled a whole bunch of characters in beta and stuff like that, which, you know, fun experience. Not that we have the characters to show for it because it was on beta. Like, that stuff's pretty good. Now the new raid's great, the Mythic Plus is great, the PvP's great.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good situation for that type of content. And then if you're a collections player and you're willing to delve into all that past stuff, that's all pretty good. I guess just maybe for those like existing World of Warcraft players who would like hit up Shadowlands and, you know, they'd be expecting the storyline to be as well told as like a Final Fantasy XIV one. And when I say that, I mean the storytelling, not the lore, right? They're sort of different things. You know, they'd want that level of polish for the in-game cutscenes that crop up all over the place. They want those well-paced, you know, campaigns. And instead, no, they get a Covenant campaign. They get, like, I guess ideally 15 minutes a week. Though not really with Renown catch-up. It's actually funny. With Renown catch-up, this is, like, probably the best time to do the Covenant campaign. Because you might actually get to experience it with a modicum of pacing.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think there's one... it's not actually a caveat to your experience at the end of the day, but I think the major problem is that it's overwhelming. Like, the game as a whole is overwhelming. Imagine logging in and landing in Oribos and not knowing what to do. It doesn't do us a super good job of leading you around the place, but if you have, like, even a modicum of guidance from a guide, from, like, a new player guide, or from someone who plays the game who can tell you what's, like, important, then all that stuff falls away in a second, and you could ignore that it's, like, maybe not as a game the most ideal package. Not every part of it is great, but like those parts in isolation, if you engage with them properly, actually can be.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing. Like, WoW it is so segmented per expansion. I'm pretty sure, there's a clip in the Clips channel about that.
Yeah.
Where the content, it's like some big new system is made and then it lasts for a while, then it's thrown in the bin because there's a new thing. I think that probably leads to a game that feels really dense and worrisome to new people. Certainly from anecdotal experience, anytime anybody I know has talked about, oh yeah, maybe I'll get into World of Warcraft, or, you know, that's been a conversation, it's always turned very quickly to, yeah, but it's been out for 15 years and I'd be so far behind. To which any World of Warcraft player goes, no, you wouldn't. The effort I put in 3 months ago is now irrelevant because of catch-up. You know, so we're sitting there laughing at that, but I think there's like a slowly onboarded meta-knowledge of how to think about and process the way that WoW is structured that a new player doesn't. And I think with WoW, it's like, it's grown so with its audience and like specifically individually for its audience that the things you will learn from other video games may be very confusing if you apply them to WoW.
Yeah, I think it is the case of, like, you would really need to go in with the intent. You need to go into the intent and with the guidance, because it can be like there's almost like a really high noise to signal ratio there. What have you discovered?
I've discovered the plant is in the way of the camera.
Nice one.
Farewell, plant.
Oh, sorry, that poor thing's seen some rough times. But yeah, I think there's a lot to get. There's a lot of noise versus the signal of good game in World of Warcraft. And I think a lot of players have all this accumulated knowledge that almost clouds exactly what people need to know. So I think whenever you have someone who's coming in going, I'm going to go PvP, like, I mean, maybe not because they're incredibly like informative guide content, but the likes of Pilav and Savix's PvP oriented videos, that is like a little culture of WoW that's really fully formed and off on its own nice little segment that I think you could hop into that really well. And if you follow them enough in their like single-mindedness, I know they do other content, but it's like that's their main thing. That being single-minded that way, you could absolutely get into that really well, the same you would any little game or any single game. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, Pilav's great. Pilav is so goddamn funny.
I love him.
Yeah, I remember that, and Scottish guy. I think he did PvP as well. He had the song of slice your balls, stomp the thing. What was he called? Ragtag. That was it.
Okay.
Man, yeah, I think that's actually a big thing. It's those elements of the game. It's so much easier to onboard yourself onto them if you can get some sort of community in.
Yeah.
And I think in the past, that community, like onboarding to World of Warcraft, used to be a lot more experiential. It was like you watched Make Love, Not Warcraft. And there was just something about like the ultimate geek out fantasy sort of land where all of the things had consequences and mattered.
Yeah.
Because, if you watch Make Love Not Warcraft, you'd think that World of Warcraft was a really hardcore sandbox game where one player could come in and ruin everything, where it's obviously not like that. But at least in the past, it always felt like it was more like, hey, let's go on this big shared adventure. And now that I think about it, if I watch a PLAB video, it's not about, oh yeah, the big shared adventure. It's kind of more like, right, PLAB's not exactly sitting there doing theory crafting PvP videos like,
course, yeah.
but, it's a lot more like, bam, straight into the gameplay and the mechanics.
Yeah.
It's like you're going to do like that for your PvP. You're going to do like your Tattles and your Dratnos and stuff like that for your automatic jacks for your PvE. And I think that being like the larger thing in the content creator space, I wonder if that means that WoW is going to attract like those more... Because WoW is like no longer just the game that everybody talks about in general, I wonder if that means that the people who actually get into WoW, it's more driven by some of those personalities and maybe has like a higher level of gameplay specificity. Like, I don't exactly know if you go onto Twitch, do you see people who enjoy World of Warcraft for a general fantasy experience?
Interesting. I would say you get those people, but a lot of those people would be watching Preach, the kind of more really old school kind of creators for that stuff, because his drama time is very much experientially based on like all of the stuff you have with your guild. He obviously is more like higher end player focused himself, but he also has roots in that whole thing. But like when it comes to the audience for the likes of Savix, your PLABs, and then on the M+ side, your like Gingies, for example, they have communities that I can't imagine they would like watch our content, for example, because it's such a different segment of audience that Savix's videos are actually just full of JoJo memes. That's what that basically entire brand is, and that speaks to entirely, maybe not entirely like younger audience, because obviously people watch that around like our age group, but it definitely hits that Twitch audience really well in a way that people who are used to Warcraft from long ago maybe aren't super familiar with.
Yeah. Like I feel like a lot of the Warcraft now is, it is that sort of gameplay focused thing that I guess, there's times it feels a bit like different from, say, what maybe was in Metz's head back when it came to, playing around with the whiteboard
not even close.
20 years ago. So an interesting situation, and I think that's basically it. There's actually lots of reasons why it is a pretty good time to try World of Warcraft if you were even getting into that gameplay-oriented stuff right now. Like it's a decent time for all of that. There are misgivings of some of the more like experienced players, but I don't think that stuff really impacts a newbie too much.
No, not at all.
I'm going to do 2 super chats before we dive into the news.
Okay.
We got a super chat from David Granger, who says, "Hola guys, TBC Classic is going to have launch raid and content staggered, unlike the original TBC launch. Opinions on this change and other changes do you think Blizzard will make? They promised, did they only promise no changes for vanilla?" And I think that's an interesting one. So, yes, they technically are staggering. They're technically doing that because Mount Hyjal is not going to be there at launch. However, I guess relevant because we're doing our TBC series at the minute. Yeah. While Hyjal was there at launch for TBC, no one did it. You basically couldn't. So the difference between TBC launch to people getting into Hyjal of WoW Classic TBC and actual TBC, I'd say it's probably going to be about the same, right? Because people did not get into Hyjal for a long time. It may as well have not been in the game on launch.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I actually think that by making this change, and please don't strike me up, but it's like by making this change, they can artificially stop people from metagaming the game in a way that it wasn't played before.
Yeah.
So instead of people going, okay, I mean, obviously there is a reason to do this thing where you have it's available at launch, people will like speedrun, see can we beat the original time? Obviously they can, but this way it actually will be accurate to the initial experience, even if the game's different. It's a change that makes the game feel like it felt at the time, which I think is going to be a controversial move if they try that in any other kind of way. But I think that's probably their reasoning for it, as opposed to fixing any mistakes. That's what I imagine anyway.
Yeah, I think that's very true. It's like no changes vanilla may as well be changes vanilla, big changes vanilla in the actual gameplay experience because the players have changed. They're engaging with it differently. They're generally better. And that's kind of what we saw. Like, times are crushed across the board. And that said, I think they did launch, like, post-nerf bosses, generally speaking, for Classic Vanilla. I think they're not going to do that for Classic TBC, because they probably recognize that, wow, the players creamed the content of Classic Vanilla.
Yeah, I think there's a lot less actual issues there as well, because I mean, I think a lot of what happened with the Classic post nerf and the whatever was it 1.13 it technically launched as, but without content, I don't think that's a problem for TBC onwards, because I think they have better records of server data from back then, so they can actually recreate patches more accurately over time. I might be making that up, but I know I would imagine so after the Classic foray.
Yeah, like I think they're launching with changes anyway. Like I think some of the leveling changes,
Yeah.
a whole bunch of, there's like so many quality of life things that slipped into the game over the duration of TBC. And it's funny, this is all stuff that, like, it's all knocking around my head because I kind of played it, but was obviously a total noob, so didn't fully appreciate it when it was happening. But also, we were going to do the complete history of TBC ages ago, and we ended up doing one episode and then kind of cancelling it because it wasn't working out. But from all of that, shocking amount of just things you take for granted were added through there. So that's our opinion on that question. There is one more super chat to cover before we get stuck into the news, though. That is from David Granger. Hang on. Yes, that's from David Granger again. Thank you,
Cheers.
David.
Cheers, David.
Who says, imagine Warcraft 3 expansion campaigns where we play through World of Warcraft content up to current X packs and content come. So I think what he's getting at is some sort of campaign that would, like, I guess, take you on a journey through expansions.
Oh, don't do this to me. That would be so cool.
Would be so cool.
That'd be really, really fun. That'd be fantastic. Oh.
Yeah, I actually wonder, is there a way Blizzard could, effectively, smartly reuse some of what they've got and then sort of wind that into a new experience? Like, what is the percentage of current World of Warcraft players that have played through the Kata storyline or the Wrath storyline and actually know what's going on? It would be pretty interesting. Imagine, I don't know what you would call it, like, because Time Walking's the obvious name, but that's the dungeon thing that Blizzard do. But yeah, what if you had something where, via the scenario system or maybe just even a quest chain, Blizzard did some sort of thing to, like, take you through the end game of an expansion. I've had too much Beppis. Through the end game of an expansion in a way that actually gives you this, like, cohesive narrative experience. They could use scaling and stuff like that. Maybe such that you could do your leveling up through Northrend and then do another campaign, like in Northrend, that would take you through, like, the story of Wrath of the Lich King in a way where you could actually appreciate it, where it would take you from, helping out Bolvar against, I don't know, Lord Dickhead the Lich. Not Kel'Thuzad, the other one that you do before Kel'Thuzad.
Don't remember the name. Sadly.
Do that. Take us to Ulduar. Give us the story. There's so much really rich stuff there. And I think the only way that most people experience it right now is probably a Nobble video.
Yeah.
It's obviously no knock to Nobble, but it's like, if you want to know the crack with Wrath of the Lich King, and you're a new player and you go to Northrend, you're just going to be confused because, it's not put together in that campaign way. So, yes, David, thank you for the two questions, and that's one that actually does bring you places mentally. And we've had discussions about, what if you had lore master sets for each continent? Yes. What if you had lore master campaigns? What if via the archaeology profession they're able to do something for the history and the lore of the game that would tie together via campaigns? There's a lot of really awesome stuff they could do there that would really just involve reusing assets, reusing content. The content wouldn't actually have to look like new modern WoW content because it would all exist within the context of its expansion. So, actually interesting questions.
Yeah, absolutely. That's I have to try not to think about this too much because it's just I would love that. So in like you could imagine every like other major patch bringing some stuff in there, and it'll just be this beautiful cadence to blend in with anything. But let's maybe not get too far down the down the.
I mean, not to get too far down, as you said, but it's the sort of thing, if they were willing to then just do a little bit more content, like, you know, just text, just characters, basic quests, to then tie it together, you could really have an awesome experience. It could even be an incredible thing for new players. So, yeah, food for thought, a good one. But with that said, it might just be time. Might just be time for the World of Warcraft news. What do you say?
Let's go for it.
Let's get right into the news. Don't worry, not like that.
Nope. We I guess we'll start here with what I have on screen, which is the Valor Points. We know exactly how much Valor. Was that Siri?
That was Siri.
Nice, very good. So we know exactly after them not telling us on PTR effectively for so long. It went live, obviously, so we know how much Valor we get. And I can see why they didn't tell us.
Yeah.
It's a weird decision.
It was, honestly, extremely stupid not to tell us, though. And before we actually get into this full news story, what I want to talk about first is what I think is the more important story. And that is that Blizzard does all these PTRs and these betas. And what that effectively is asking for unpaid labor from their players. Now, if those players are willing to do that, then that is obviously 100% okay, etc., etc. Yep. But if you're going to do that, at least try to set those people up because they want to be there to help you. So at least try to set it up so that they can. And this is the one thing that I just wish they were better at. And what it reminds me of 100% is something that happens to us at work all the time. Which is, what is the main thing we've got to get done? Get videos out. But, I mean, say for our clips channel, what I'm supposed to do is schedule a whole bunch of tweets to promo those clips and do YouTube community posts, no more than once a day, really, to highlight specific clips that I think are, super relevant, extra sort of topics that the regular channel audience would want to see. That is important stuff to do, and it's good for the user experience, blah, 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 blah. And it doesn't get done. And it doesn't get done because the real thing we're here to do is make videos. So apply this to the situation with Blizzard, and I think for them it's like their main thing is developing the game, right? So I think, and knowing that, it's obvious they do not have enough resources in the community team. The European community team, it's going away, right? So it's just Lore and whoever's working with him over in America. And it's that thing. What is their job? Well, their main job is going to be those big milestones, those big things they've got to get done, getting all the patch notes right, coordinating with the developers, getting the player feedback from the forums. And I think that just means that a lot of really important stuff slips through the cracks in these testing processes, and it means that we're flying blind. And the reason why I get a little bit pissed is because it's like you're asking for our time to help to test the game and to help you refine your product so it can be better and more profitable. We actually want to help you do that. So could you please give us what we need to give you good feedback? And that's what gets me. During beta, we had so many instances where we were just, as testers, we were flying blind. And the thing there is, let's just say VP drops whatever it drops on PTR. But it's the public test realm. There's literally a disclaimer that it's work in progress, that numbers, etc., may not be final. And that means that when you're a player trying to diagnose that system, trying to provide Blizzard with feedback that could help them get ahead of issues, make the game better, you can't, because you don't know whether that value on the beta is, or the PTR, is true. You just have no idea. And they don't tell you. And we've consistently had this thing where all I would want to know is what is the principle of what Blizzard wants to do. What is their design intent? And if they had have just said, we're not 100% sure on the amount of Valor Points we're going to give you, but we're actually thinking of making it fixed regardless of Keystone level, and here's our reasoning why. If they did that in a post, we would have been able to sit down and actually, engage with them and engage with them having a context of what they actually intend and the reasons why. And I think that because they don't do that, they end up with situations where like this goes live, and if you go onto r/competitive WoW, which I did, what you basically saw is the knee-jerk reaction comments being really quite negative, and then there actually being quite well thought out comments that were really explaining why there's actually quite a bit of sense and logic going on here. I went on to Wowheads, their comments, the responses to their Twitter thread on this particular story, and yeah, there was a lot of people that seemed confused. It seemed unintuitive. And it just, for me, comes back to that consistent pattern with Blizzard where we do not know what they intend. And that really is a big challenge. If I was to say one thing for Blizzard as we move into the future, whenever there's systems like this, there just has to be some sort of way that they do a better job. Now, there have been times where, Lore, I believe, compiles those like developer updates whenever like a new build is pushed. But there's just times like this where, there was posts like that. It actually did not discuss Valor Points in terms of acquisition. I think it did for Callings, but it just didn't tell you. It didn't tell you how much Valor Points or, how much currency you get for the Mythic Plus gearing system by doing Mythic Plus. And for us, not actually seeing Blizzard say that, what that means is we might see that 135 value in PTR, but if Blizzard have seemingly obviously and maybe purposefully omitted it, then we cannot treat that 135 that was on the PTR as actually being true. Val, one of he's watches us, watches Preach. He's watched us since the beginning. Yeah. Remember streaming Timeless Isles and he was in chat. He did some research in PTR, found 135. And it's like, yeah, that's neat. But if they have specifically left 135 out of their blue post, how the hell do we know that 135 means anything? So we're going to get into the story, but I first wanted to just talk about that so you guys can sort of understand a little bit of what the testing process is like and some of the frustrations that I think quite a few testers would have where, obviously we do have a profit motive to do that. But at the same time, if, we will sit down and spend a long time trying to think about these systems. And yeah, it's a part of what we're doing here. And those are monetized YouTube videos. But we do want the info to be really good, to be useful to our viewers and also to be useful to Blizzard. We want to help. So it's just that sort of thing where you just feel a bit hamstrung sometimes.
Yeah, I'm not going to continue this any further so we can get into the story, but I'll leave one point. Remember what conduits were going to be like before they told us their intention? And we said, hang on, no. What are you doing? Destructible gem sockets. That's what they were going to be. And they were upfront with that. They said, hello, this is how we're thinking these are going to work. And as a community, we went, no. Not as in to try and strong arm them into making the game the way we want, but it's a case of it. Like we had as a community with all of these like beautiful bits of feedback. Just here's what's going to happen if this system goes live like this. They read it and they went, "Yep, we agree."
Yeah,
it's worth it in the long-term health of the game. It's worth it to take the time, give their developers the freedom to go, I've designed a system. I'm going to take to the forums and say, here's my blue post, hit me feedback at this link or something like that. Yeah. I think that's totally worth it.
A bit of me worries that we've got to the stage where that's challenging or maybe where the developers are very much leaning on the community team to be the people who shift that over to them. Yeah. And if there's maybe a bit of isolation there, and perhaps if some of the decisions that I would personally believe have been made in a situation of a little bit of isolation from the player base, that's obviously fostered a lot of discontent. And I think a lot of the discourse for WoW has obviously never been squeaky clean. But as of late, the specific, hey, developers, you actually don't understand how I play the game. I mean, remember Torments?
Oh, yeah.
The all-out war from everybody in Torments that was like, if you think these Torments should be in the game, you just don't understand how the game is played. Sorry. I just wonder if some of that dev-player connection has been a little bit hampered, a little bit hurt by a bit of the big corporate machine sort of enforcing some distance between. I mean, if you look at a game like Ashes of Creation, like the CEO can just hop onto a Skype call with Asmongold and bam. Obviously, that can't happen with Blizzard.
Not a chance.
You know, you're only going to get to talk to a Blizzard developer, you know, on a Zoom call where there is a Blizzard staffer there who's got some form of PR role. And that's not the fault of anyone at Blizzard, of course. It's just, it's a big company. It's grown up that way. So, an interesting broad discussion. We're going to nip it in the bud. I think these are things that are all very interesting. I would say don't listen to this and then give Lore a bunch of shit. I don't think that these things are happening because... you know, of any issues there. I think it's because, like, dude probably just needs more team members, more resources, the ability to actually do more things, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I remember I did a video years ago on, like, just some community issues with World of Warcraft. I was pointing out how Star Citizen, which effectively is a monetized live game via their YouTube and stuff, does a pretty good job of engaging. And, you know, I remember him commenting on my tweet being like, oh, yeah, or my video being like, yeah, good video. That's really interesting. So I know that Lore actually does give a shit about this stuff, does want it all to be really good. I just think there are times where, you know, it's a big company, some of his things, they fall through the cracks. And you got situations here where people find out, oh, it's 135 Valor points. They kind of find it out of nowhere and without the context they need. And then they end up screwed and confused. And what happens when a player feels screwed and confused? They get angry. And the WoW cycle perpetuates itself. So to get into the actual news in our World of Warcraft news show,
Yes.
Valor Points and Mythic Plus Dungeons, it is 135 Valor Points, regardless of the difficulty of the dungeon that you do. Instantly feels odd. Now,
It does.
I have already recorded the pre-recorded WoW news that goes up tomorrow. Are we cannibalizing our own content? Who knows? Yes, probably.
We'll find out.
But in going through that and really sitting down trying to puzzle out this system, I think I know why Blizzard made most of the decisions that they made, and I actually agree with almost all of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure you told me about, like, where you were where you thought they were coming from in this regard.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'll let you explain it in a second, but it's like, it's technically correct, but the way we are shown the package feels a bit odd.
Yeah. Because as a player, you're thinking about, okay, I'm going to get a currency for doing a thing. If I do the harder version of it, obviously I'll get more currency. That's intuitive. Doesn't apply to anima, funny enough. But that is what you naturally think. I do the harder thing so I get more stuff. Now you do, because you get more gear. Or not more gear, you get higher item level gear. And you have to remember that, you know, if you're talking about a two-handed weapon, every 3 item levels on that two-handed weapon that drops may as well be 1,000 Valor points. So you're always going to want to target a Mythic plus 15 for the fastest gearing because of all those Valor points. Now, there's another thing. If we're just to say, oh, just grind Mists of Tyrna Scythe plus 2s forever, the game's awful, it's now just like Maw 3 chest runs forever. It's actually not like that, because this is a seasonal capped currency. So if you were doing that, and you're running your Mythic plus 2 Tyrna Scythe, and you've got like an item level 196 two-hander that you want to bring up to eye level 220 with your Valor points, are you sure you want to do that? Because that would cost you, like, what, 6,000 to 8,000 Valor points? You can earn, assuming like a 22-week season, and 750 VP a week, you can earn like, 16,000 VP, right? 16,000 VP in the entire season. Are you seriously going to want to spend more than a third of your entire VP on just that one thing because you've thought the best thing to do is to grind out plus 2s instead of do what Blizzard clearly intends for you to do, which is to target the hardest content that you can do? And the other side of that is, well, the Great Vault. In fact, oh wow, actually this is a realization that may have hit me. Good. What if Blizzard held back eye level 226 in the Great Vault? What if they did that with the intent that players would always want to get 10 Mythic plus 15 runs to get, or whatever the highest end of run drop, or whatever the highest weekly box level is. because if you could, maybe they thought if you could get 226 via the upgrade system, then that would leave there being less of an incentive to do the hardest possible content that you could. So there's that. There's then also the fact that, well, I mean, yeah, you'll always want to do at least 10 M plus dungeons. Well, if you're a big M plus player anyway, at the highest that you can to get your 3 options of Great Vault. Now there's another thing. The other thing is, this system is right now 5,750 VP that you can get. But that's because that's increasing by 750 a week from the start of Season 1 of Shadowlands. Now that means that this system is basically balanced with a weekly acquisition of 750 in mind. That is 4.5? Wait, no. What am I talking about? So 750 divided by 135, sorry, 5.5. That's doing 5.5 Mythic Plus dungeons. Now, if you want to get 2 options in your chest, you're doing 4 dungeons. That's most of your VP cap. So, right now, this is all a little bit maybe feeling odd to players based on, oh, but I'm doing the harder content, I'd expect to get more points. But it actually all, I think, does level out, makes sense. Once you explain it, just that that's not exactly intuitive immediately, and that's why there's mixed reactions.
Yeah, I mean, I think the entire problem that people had with the system is just so, I don't want to say super easily fixed, but is entirely a framing thing. If they had dropped that to like 100 and then said you get an extra 5, or maybe not 10, that would be insane, but like an extra 5 or an extra, drop it to 50, an extra 10 per level, then people would have went, okay, we understand, we get it. I think that would have been, because the cap is so, like that's actually a lot compared to the cap. I'm genuinely surprised that 5.5 dungeons is what you need to do per week to cap. Yeah. Because especially when you're doing like a +2, that's no time whatsoever to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be once a day. That's 7 dungeons a week.
Yeah, I mean, that's significantly better. So I think if they dropped the number and just added extra per key, even just a little bit, it would have at least made sense. And I think that's where most of the problem is. The system is at least relatively balanced this way. And they could have solved this without throwing off the balance, I think. But I think it is a case where if they had a blue post for this, that wouldn't have been a problem. If they'd explained exactly what they were thinking here.
Exactly,
I think.
Brett Murr said there is no cap. No, there is a cap. It increases by 750 per week. There was originally intended to be a cap of 1,500 on your character at once that they have since scrapped. But no, it is 750 a week. It's just that right now we are week 5,750 divided by 750 of Shadowlands. So we're week 7 or whatever. That's why the cap is big right now. That is the cap. It's just, yeah, that's how it's gonna increase over time. That said, there are some odd things with this system. You can absolutely make a big mistake. I mean, there are some players who are going to think to themselves, well, I just got this new drop. Is it BIS? No. But I need more performance out of my character to try to push the content that I want to push. So I'm going to upgrade this bit of gear. Wrong. If you upgrade a piece of gear that is not a part of your BIS set, and then you replace that bit of gear, well, the bit of gear you upgraded is now no longer in your character, but you've just eaten up however many Valor Points out of your seasonal cap. Because your seasonal cap, as I said, say assuming a 22-week-long season, 750 a week, it's like 16,000 or something.
16,500.
Yeah. So that is another odd little thing about this system, I suppose. And it's one that doesn't appear with the Conquest system, because in Conquest, upgrades are, of course, capped by your rating, and honor is just you can just get honor till the cows come home. The only thing that's capped is the acquisition of gear that you specifically choose. So, interesting similarities and differences between the two.
Yeah, I think there's a pretty handy way to. This is like it just came to me while you were talking there. I think I envision a solve for that specific problem, because that feels really unintuitive in a way that I think will really, really like ruin some players. And I'd thought of it in the way of, oh yeah, I mean, just wait for your BIS. Obviously, the solution's easy. If you understand that, you're fine. But if you're waiting on your base for so long, then you do need a way to temporarily gear up a bit faster, especially if you're hitting Valor cap. It's like it's just going to feel terrible that you're setting a cap and can't use it for anything. Even though it doesn't materially matter, it's still going to feel bad. So I think the actual solve there is probably to add a dismantle system.
I actually agree. And I think I agree because it's really good when something in a game feels like a toy. And it feels like you can tinker, you know? You just want to be Garrus in the back doing his calibrations, right? Sometimes. So if you know, oh yeah, I've went, 6,000 VP into the seasonal cap, and I've put in a bunch of gear, and then you get your base, and you're like, oh cool, I'll strip the upgrades off that bit of gear and slap them in this bit of gear. And what that basically means is you've just got this pool of, VP that you can use to like redistribute item levels in your gear. And then suddenly that's, I can already see the downside though, but suddenly that's then a system where a player actually has got this resource to play with throughout a season. They get more of that resource. And I think that actually means that as they go through the season, they feel like they're getting more options. So that is kind of neat. Although that said, of course, whenever you think about these game design things, you instantly go into problem solving mode. So then, what if, Jimmy wants his inscrutable quantum device, he's got 6,000 VP in his character, and he just thinks, okay, I went on to Simcraft, and or raid bots, and I've worked out that this trinket is what I need at as high an item level as I can. Therefore, what I'm going to do is run a whole bunch of +2s until I get that trinket drop, and I'm going to redistribute all my item levels onto that right now for the maximum gain right now. You could also think, what if, that allows people to actively rebalance the VP of their character absolutely perfectly at every single step? Oh dear, will people be simming 7,000 times a day? Will, whenever raid bots goes public, will it have a higher valuation than Roblox? Who knows? So you can see issues with the system like that. Though, to be honest with you, put the power in the player's hands. If they want to be stupid with it, then fair enough, let them be stupid. Personally, I would rather engage with the system like that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of those problems are, I think, solvable by just little bits of tweaks here and there. I think just little things. I mean, obviously, this is literally, they've thrown Valor in. They've done a loose copy of PvP adjusted for PvE. It's in a 0.05 patch. Hopefully, there'll be something like this in future, because I can't imagine they're blind to all of these problems that us as effectively armchair devs for World of Warcraft have figured out. I'm sure they've got that stuff on the radar.
We know the Blizzard are pretty damn good at thinking about problems first almost all the time.
Yes.
Almost to the point where they will let the solution to a problem, almost do more damage than it's worth. Yeah. But that's a different topic for a different time.
For sure.
And I think that's mostly us wrapped up in the Valor Point thing. What it basically means is your gameplay is not going to change. You're going to want to get your options from the vault. You'll get some VP along the way, and you can use it. That's your TLDR. You don't really need to get more stuck into it or anything like that. And I think the real thing to do is, as you said, they're aware of the issues that could crop up. Patch 9.1 is going to be a fresh season, and I imagine this system will be tweaked to hell and reset for that.
Yeah. That gives us a perfect segue to on to our next piece of news, which is little tweaks and improvements.
Yes, it is. But I've actually got to hijack that to say to David Granger, multiple David Grangers, also Thomas, and Grant. Thank you for the super chats. We are doing a Control the Show segment after we went through the body of the news. So super chats, we will get on to them. It will be good fun. Till then, though, speaking of small tweaks, you can now purchase 5 Marks of Honor for 2,000 honor in Oribos.
Yeah, this is a bigger deal than you would imagine, but mostly from the perspective of, for the entirety of the 9.0.2, excess honor was a problem. Everyone had more honor than they knew what to deal with, and there's nothing for them. So and I think this is actually more interesting because this was at the very tail end of PTR. This was a last minute change. Maybe it was planned and it only went in later, but it was literally, I think it was hotfixed onto the release candidate, because I remember it was after we had one of those videos written that Dakor messaged me saying, "Oh, this is new."
Yes.
I was like, whoa, agility and problem solving from Blizzard, specifically for PvP. That's not the opposite of foreboding. It's really I'm lost for words.
Well, it's spooky.
Yeah. Spooky.
I mean spooky in a good way, right? We don't want to seem like we're just beating up Blizzard all the time, but generally speaking, Blizzard is this, like, I don't know, I was going to say 500-pound gorilla. I don't even know how heavy gorillas get, but they're always that just big, colossal, powerful, strong gorilla with all the resources and stuff in the world, and they move very slowly as they did things. As a big corporate company with hundreds of developers to manage and all those issues.
Yeah, they're a tank.
Yeah. And then suddenly we saw all this crazy agility. They were slapping hot fixes into everything left, right, and center. Mythic Plus Dungeons were just changing a whole bunch. This was added in. I think you can get, if you want to buy a bag of fish for your Valor Points, they made it so you can buy a bag of fish for your Valor Points. Maybe not necessarily fish, but crafting resources, changes to the raid gearing. That was all hot fixed in. And, it's generally speaking, what we always found with Blizz is they'd put these problems and they just leave them for so long. And I was like, well, you don't like the current version, all its issues, we're going to change it later. I mean, I wonder, did they maybe see patch 8.3 went, did 8.3 basically fucking collapse and fall over? And then once they decided to add in new currency systems, did they maybe see an uptick? Did they maybe realize, oh yeah, mid-season changes. Turns out if there's a problem the players would like solved, and maybe we solve it, maybe they come back and they play. Because that's certainly happening. Season 1 is better. It just is better. This is a better time to play WoW now.
100%.
So, yeah. I guess the other part of this then is, you can get Marks of Honor for doing that stuff. Marks of Honor are a pretty awesome system, actually. We talked about this last time, but it's just that thing. You're getting you can get all these Marks of Honor. You can go shopping with your character. Have a day out, day out in the shops.
Yeah,
pick up your marks.
I think the very next thing that I don't want to say needs to happen, but the obvious thing here is, where's the Marks of Valor?
That would be an interesting thing, because there is that thing though where there's a lot of gameplay from going and doing old raids and stuff like that to build your set.
Yeah.
And if they did do some sort of Marks of Valor thing, they could end up, or at least they could maybe say to themselves, oh, but we'd be cannibalizing that. And I guess you could have issues where you could farm up your Marks of Valor by doing some content, and then you could maybe spend them in content you couldn't otherwise do. So, like, what if you farmed up Marks of Valor in, like, I don't know, whatever, but you spent them on, BFA raid stuff, which you can't really solo right now. So there could be some issues there. But in principle, I would really like the idea.
Yeah.
You just have to get a bunch of the details right. I think it's that thing where if it's a little bit more formalized in some way that you can do that, then I think people will be more willing to engage with it.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of, like, I don't know why the Firelands is in my head for something, but I was thinking if there's ways for you to, like, get Marks of Valor as your base currency and then do something with other, like, gear or loot from old raids that might make sense. I mean, I'm sure it would be a bit of a nightmare initially for setup and would probably take, like, a decent amount of time from a dev or two, but just go throw tokens, like, from that specific raid on maybe the trash in a raid, maybe the end boss of each raid from the past, and then set up, like, a vendor at the entrance or rotating something like that's the kind of thing where I think all those problems are fairly solvable, but it's just a case of it's right there. They introduce Honor and then Conquest and then Vendor, and these marks, now they're using them properly for actual current content being fed through as opposed to praying you get them. And I think it's there. It's there. Why not use it?
It's funny. It's like if I ended up at Blizzard somehow, it's like the one project I'd want to be involved with is basically, how can we really thriftily get more out of this thing? How can we really thriftily and cheaply and, roguishly and all of that make more use out of the stuff that is in the world of Warcraft? That's what I would probably be more interested in doing in a way, just because I feel like through all of these things, there is so much potential that could be tapped into in some way. It's just the sort of thing where all you'd really need is a half-decent idea implemented well, and it probably wouldn't require a lot of new art assets or things like that to do. And yeah, just like how Marks of Honor have sort of helped unlock a little bit of a system there, yeah, could happen. So I think that's that for Marks of Honor.
That's us.
How are we for the
What's
next story?
Okay, well, good thing I definitely didn't spend any time lambasting them for this change based on the previous behavior, because now it's just a load of bugs that occurred in 9.0.5.
Yes.
That's fun.
I suppose with the rapid progress of this patch coming out, because it came out in a state where we didn't know what Valor Points were, so we did not think it was coming out as quickly as it was. It's out right now. There was a few bugs. I mean, it's mostly forgivable stuff. It's obviously not great if it happens to you. But yeah, a bunch of people went in. They did the weekly Souls quest. It was supposed to give him 500 anima if capped. Gave him 250 instead.
Yep.
Since been hot fixed, so fair enough. Problem solved.
Yeah, I think, and then obviously the next one was Soul Ash, not been rewarded from Torghast for a very short period of time. I'm very happy that didn't happen to me.
Yeah.
I would have been furious, but it's a case where all of these little things are slipping through the cracks for them with this patch, which again, like with the Marks of Honor thing, I actually think it's them making the right decisions. It's them going, okay, we haven't tested this patch ad infinitum internally. We haven't waited to make sure every bug is fixed. It was like, oh, this is ready. Is it 90% done? Yeah. All right, good. It's kind of, this is going to be a weird analogy, and I love food analogies, but it's like an egg. Okay, stay with me. When you're cooking an egg, you don't wait till it's done to take it out of the pan. You take it out of the pan before it's done, because the residual heat will keep cooking. So that's what they're doing with patches. They're kind of going, you're almost done. Out you go.
The player's the residual heat.
Okay, that maybe doesn't work, but it's a case where it's close enough, it'll do. And I think that if that gave them this patch a week early, and then that's an extra week, they can do other things. You can see how that'll compound into them buying lots of time and lots of resources over.
Yeah, I mean, a week is a big percentage of a year when you really get into it.
Almost,
patch. The time between patches is measured in weeks. So if you can save a week here and a week there, then maybe your next patch is going to be 2 weeks earlier. Maybe it gives you a bit more time for pre-production than the next one. Yep. Totally understandable. So yeah, not the sort of thing we're going to be too pissed off at.
Yeah, I mean, shit happens. It's fine. People might be a little bit pissed off with the next one, though, which is, again, they just went fast. And there we go.
Ah, yes, or smirking Blood Elves.
Yeah. It's weird. I think they actually, this specifically highlights to me that they're going fast. Because how does a change like that of the fistbones go just slip in there? They're clearly going. I hope they can fix it soon, because it is a little unsettling. I'm very happy I play Alliance right now, but
yeah, it's the sort of thing where it's like, I get it. I'm not going to be pissed off at him for it or anything like that. But also, it's kind of unfortunate.
Yeah, for sure.
So there were some bugs, but we'll all live.
Yeah, we'll bounce on to the. Is that really the last story of the day? Wild. Really, not much has happened, has there?
Well, it's a decently big one.
Yep. Here we go.
I believe also some power would be useful for you.
Ah, yes. Whoops. That's a 33%. That's a third. That'll get by.
Yeah, that machine, that M1 Mac, which is doing a little bit of work. It's lost like 10% in an hour and a bit.
We have some. We are highly trained professionals.
Oh, absolutely. So this is, judging by chat, this is what a lot of people have really been waiting for. And that is that we have news for TBC Classic. And, this actually coming out and seeming a bit more real, it had a bit of a mental impact on me. Like a positive
good one,
but
okay.
Yeah, it's like I saw this and I thought, oh shit, this is like the time when I first got into World of Warcraft has actually came up. Because, I played other people's accounts and stuff like that during the vanilla era, but you know, other than doing that in Game the World, the LAN center I gamed at after the rowing club, like it was this early TBC stuff that was when I was properly getting into the game. So to me, the idea that the pre-patch for TBC, which could let me roll a Draenei as an example and level that up as it was, yeah, that's actually pretty exciting. And that it could be May 18th, if that date is is actually correct. That's real cool. I mean, okay, well, May 18th, that's 2 months away?
Yes, May 18th is. Well, I mean, it's currently the 12th of March, so it is about 9 weeks away, I believe. It's about 9 weeks away, which means they really, if this is, no, I guess this is pre-patch. I was going to say they need to hurry up with the alpha and beta for putting SIG, but if this is pre-patch and they plan to run this for a couple months, then it would cause some overlap, but they could run any betas and this concurrently.
Yeah.
And that would probably work for most people if they're given level 70 pre-mades or like 58s or 60s on the beta.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to think about dates overall. So if this is happening May 18th,
Yes.
right? And then that pre-patch is going to last for maybe a few months, which would not surprise me at all considering the amount of time it takes to level a character up.
Yeah.
And then assuming the Blizzard wants their, August time major release, I personally would be expecting TBC to happen in around August. So if you've got from May till August for leveling up, I mean, that's a lot of WoW engagement and activity. More importantly, that's like 2 points of hype, right, for the game. And generally, if you're doing something like World of Warcraft, you'll want to spread out your big hype events so that you've got lots of them over time. It doesn't feel like there's dry spells. So I guess I have to wonder when, does this say anything for patch 9.1 at all? Or are we just going to have a situation where it's like patch 9.1 and classic pre-patch basically happen at the same time?
If I had to harbor a guess, I would say their current plan is 9.1 to be likely mid-late June. Maybe that's a little bit far away. It's a little far away,
Ooh.
but that would give them enough runtime for late August TBC to not impact the initial wave of 9.1 stuff. It might clip a little bit of playtime, so I imagine they actually might just overlap these instead. But I think they are very much in a situation where sometimes the game development cycles and release cycles will just, because they're two separate products, they will overlap and there's not much they can do about it. But I think there's a I mean, for pre-patch, I imagine that'll draw a decent amount of engagement, but it wouldn't destroy a 9.1 patch as much as the actual launch of TBC would.
Yeah.
So I think they're probably fine to do that. I don't know if there's much to take away overall date-wise here, but
Okay. It's just interesting to me. I'm trying to think about like just those times where WoW it's in vogue, it's talked about in places, and all that shit seems like pretty strong for getting WoW like sort of being talked about in the public space.
For sure.
So yeah, I mean, if it is going to be 18th of May, which is what this data mine string would sort of suggest, even though we should say that could just be placeholder, could just be bullshit. We have no idea.
It says default clone date, not expected clone date or wanted clone date. It's just here's the date we have in this global string.
Yeah, so it's like if it was, then I mean it's kind of funny. Like you saying June for patch 9.1 does give me the heebie-jeebies. I mean, man, a situation where November's X-Pack launch and like mid-June is the next patch, and especially in the case where, when did Rise of Ashara come out? That was end of June, right?
Oh, I could not tell you.
So I don't want to.
Sure.
Let's just say I have somewhat heard maybe,
Yes.
wink, 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 that the initial plan was for that to be like May.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It obviously wasn't May. And we obviously know why. It was because, Battle for Azeroth kind of fell over and they had to do a whole bunch of fixing.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a long ass time. And there was, 8.1.5, there was 8.1. What if we had a similar timeline, but without patch 8.1 and patch 8.1.5? Both patches that added in substantial content. You know, not super substantial, but 815 did add in, was it Brawlers Guild and the whole Xalatath quest line that, of course, led up to Crucible of Storms. Yeah, it's just, I mean, you saying that, it does spook me out a little bit. And also, what you're saying is not completely insane because we are, you know, it's the 12th of March. We're in mid-March right now. And if a PTR takes 2.5 months, that's typically what they do take. I mean, for a major patch, right? Then we're looking at 2.5 months after March. That's either late May or June. And that's in a situation where you've got this, perhaps, just this pretty large gap of time, but unlike similar-ish gaps of time in the past, there hasn't been that tide over content. You know, there hasn't been like the Suramar or 7-1, the invasions coming in for 8-1.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, a bit odd. I think it just does speak to us for WoW right now being in a situation where they're obviously behind. And they're obviously behind, but I would say for reasons that we can't really begrudge them because everyone in the industry is behind.
Yeah, for sure.
Like if you're a World of Warcraft mono gamer, you may not realize it because, you know, the only thing you're paying attention to is WoW. Of course, we run the other channel, right? The news channel. And I mean, if your game was supposed to come out in 2021, almost certainly isn't.
Yeah.
The delays that have happened have been wild. Just that World of Warcraft is a game that can't be delayed because of its very nature. So I think that's probably why they did so much to get 9.0.5 out. I think they knew they needed that stopgap, and there was just no other way they could get 9.1 sort of in our hands on time. So not to blame them, it's just a shit situation that's happened to the world.
Yeah, it's terrible. At least they're not under fire for what is it? I think it was Santa Monica Studio were being. It was only a little bit of ire. It wasn't too bad, but people were starting to go, "Why did you announce God of War 2 for 2021? There was no way that was going to happen." And it was like it kind of conspiratorial, but it was a case where everyone, even like the general gaming community, knows that COVID knocked so many things back that they're looking at release dates and going, nah, even we know that's not right. Like,
yeah, but if you want to sell a bunch of PS5s, you definitely want your audience thinking the next year there's going to... I'm not subscribing to that theory, but you could say that.
Yeah, for this, it's a case where I'm happier for it to take as long as they need. It's kind of the short-term loss for a long-term gain. At least I feel that way. Because if 9.1 came out at the end of May and it launched with a whole host of bugs, some like numbers weren't tuned correctly. It's a case where if they do their like second wave of Stygia stuff or whatever they're gonna call, I don't know if did they say they call it Stygia or just a
new Venari currency,
whatever the new thing is for Venari and Korthia, if that's like balanced off or suffers from any of the same problems that like I felt that Anima has for the balance of numbers, I will be significantly more upset than waiting another week or 2 or 3 weeks for a patch.
It's like a large part of our personal issues with the game is like we enjoy the raid stuff, but we feel like, you know, that content that we would do in between raids during the Legion expansion, so like the class order hall stuff, the collection stuff, we don't like Renown. Neither of us like it. You know, basically for me, what should feel like a battle pass that you earn instead feels like a dressed up time gate. And I think that's meant it hasn't really achieved what I think it should have achieved in the player experience front. So it's like, we haven't felt great about the pacing of that. Neither of us feel good about the pacing of Anima. We both think that Stygia is completely stupid and broken. We both think that Torghast has incredible potential, but it's just like the Lego set was put together wrong, so it doesn't work. It's less. Basically, so much we think, because we've had so many conversations about this between each other. We basically think that Shadowlands has got all these great parts, but it was put together in a big rush. Such Shadowlands is, I would say, so much less than the sum of its parts in a way that became extremely obvious once initial progression had been completed.
Yes.
You know, once your renown slowed down and your anima gains were just kind of what they were and your initial fun gearing via stuff like the unranked PvP gearing system, once that stuff was over, it just sort of fell to pieces a bit. And so much of that is just the assembly stage. Yes. And that's the sort of thing where, I can't say too much about things, but, in some of the conversations that we are having regarding what the game studio is doing over here, when we're doing dates, we are trying to ensure that we have a big runway for the bit that just involves playing our game again and again and again and again and again, and working out what are the little bits that make this not feel like the sum of its parts. And it just feels like by the time they had built the Lego bricks that would become the Shadowlands Lego set, they had 2 days to put it together. And if you were following the Shadowlands beta, that's basically, it's pretty obvious that's what happened. So yeah, to your point, it's like you can have all these great individual components like Torghast, and then you can have them come out too quick and not be ready. That can't happen to patch 9.1. So I am with you. I am absolutely even if 9.1 is a month later and that month is not at all spent on content and it's just spent on ensuring the implementation is bug free and rock solid and all that stuff, that's 100% what the game needs.
Yeah, I'm gonna give a little bit of a glimpse into my head, and this is why I constantly think that Shadowlands is so much more than it ended up being put together. I keep thinking about the amount of time I spent in the Maw that I actually kind of enjoyed, and that was basically me going around and killing rares, and I wasn't super enjoying the experience of it all, but I was looking at handy notes and I was like, man, all of this stuff is cool. Why am I running around this barren wasteland doing it because an add-on pointed it out to me? If they had a framework for actually exploring all of that, they kind of suffered a little bit of that in Mechagon, but they did have a little bit more actual guidance there. If the Maw had more guidance as to where the rares are, who they were, what was going on with them, even just pop-up quests when you go by that have decent text.
Yeah.
If there was a framework for doing that, instead of it being systemized, do this until you get the pet content. If it had been framed correctly, even with just a little bit of work, all of that content would have come together to mean so much more than it does individually.
Yeah, it feels like all these devs spent so much time making these little dioramas, these little vignettes, these little, encounters and quest zones and things, and they put all their love and their stuff into those things. But it's players very rarely get to experience that, I'd say, in the way that the developer actually crafted it, because they're just there to get some Stygia to grind up sockets. And by the way, they don't even want to be there anyway, because they're doing this not because they want to be in the Maw. So therefore it doesn't make sense. Which is a very different thing from, say, the Time the Isle, right? Where if you were an endgame character, you did not need to go to the Isle unless you just wanted some of the, maybe some stuff for your alts or whatever, but you didn't really need to be there. Yet it was still a pretty damn successful thing. So,
sure.
Yeah, no, it's interesting stuff. Going back to this, it was funny. So my experience of Classic, it was very brief, sadly, and it wasn't intended to be like that. My plan was to join up with Stark Industries, I was in their guild. Draz and everybody, right? PreachCon people, great community, lots of fun. We both got to level 13.
Yes.
Right? I remember me and you, we were in a party of 2. I was a hunter, you were a druid.
Yep.
We had just an awesome experience that night. Everything we did, actually, all that stuff, people saying, oh yeah, it's so much more meaningful. We were like, oh yeah, it kind of is.
Certainly felt it.
Yeah.
Certainly felt it.
Even I remember doing some very basic gold making and just having this incredible realization that I felt like it mattered. Then real life happened. And real life had to go and happen, didn't it?
As it always does.
Because we're a busy bunch. We had channels to run. We had the news channel to do. And it's that sort of thing. I mean, even for, say, the lore content that the likes of myself and, Jared on our team, Nobble, from a writing perspective, the way that, say, me, Jared, and Nobble could be enjoying and playing World of Warcraft is actually on Chronicle and Wowpedia and Blizzard Books and things like that. That's how we're engaging in the experience of World of Warcraft, because, sometimes it's where I'm envious of streamers. I'm like, oh, they're actually getting to play World of Warcraft that much. where, you know, for me, it's like, well, I have got to get this lore video done, because if I don't get it done, if I don't get it written by this date and recorded by that date, then our editors won't have anything to do. Uh-oh. And that just got in the way of WoW Classic so much. So for me, this feels like the next jumping in point. And there's actually a way where I may be more interested in TBC than Classic. And some of that is maybe for more personal reasons, but it's like some of the gearing and the progression of the raids is just that little bit more codified. And the design of the raids is just that little bit more advanced, and the class design is just that little bit more carried forward. And the PvP's there, you know, and get your welfare epic, so you can get your, you know, your Batman shoulders and all that stuff. If I was not doing so much work stuff, I would love to jump into a TBC classic-sized time sink. So, you know, I think I am going to make a new character whenever this date comes up. You know, make a Draenei, take it through. I'm the one person, apparently, who doesn't hate the Draenei starting zones, so that could be pretty neat.
How?
Yeah, I'm the one person who both doesn't hate the Draenei starting zone and also doesn't hate Hellfire Peninsula.
No, you're not human. That's impossible.
Yeah, I also went to Borean Tundra first. I prefer Howling Fjord, of course. But
Good.
you know what? I thought the Borean Tundra had an awesome beginning. It's just when you end up going, you know, to the airstrip and stuff, it gets a bit less fun. And hey, you got Thessarian and the Lich.
Yeah.
You know, there's cool stuff going on in the Borean Tundra. Borean Tundra. Up the Borean Tundra.
Boring Tundra.
Yes, the
I'm
boring
sure
tundra.
people have made that joke. I don't even classify the Thessarian. I know it's literally in there, but because all the Thessarian stuff and the Kalawak, or some of the Kalawak stuff, happens where the landscape turns from the kind of tundra, scourge, village, grass, plain stuff. When it turns into snow, I'm just like, this is Dragonblight now. Even though it's like half the zone, I'm just like, no, it's Dragonblight. This is Dragonblight.
Yeah, so it's a funny situation, and I also think for me, there's just something about the progression of TBC that would kind of click with me. Like, I'm that sort of player where the goals that I would set for myself are quite aligned with the attunement system of TBC anyway.
Oh, yes.
And I would find taking my character through the attunement journey, which is what I missed out on when I first went there. Like, I did I did non-heroic dungeons and like Karazhan twice. So my TBC experience is just so like, as a total noob, just leveling up, completely confused and in wonder of this big bizarre world I was in. Actually being able to engage with that in the way that a player who is maybe a few years older than me at that time would, that is so exciting. I would love to do that.
Yeah.
Probably won't have the time. I would love to, though.
Yeah, no, I would love to print out that attunement chart and just like put it on my desk, use it as a mouse mat, and just tick things off as I go. Because I think that's the thing that actually, it's the thing that changed between Legion and now in WoW that's like annoyed me the most is there's a lack of like little to-do list things. Not necessarily because productivity or anything, but it's just, oh, here's a unique thing I can go and do. Here's a unique thing I can go and do. That kind of achievement journey feels a lot like that. Also, there are two experiences I would love to relive. Well, one relive, which is, I still remember the first time I went to Zangarmarsh whenever I had my flight form. And I remember, I don't know how I remember it so clearly, but I just remember sitting at the family computer, sitting with a terrible, like 15 quid Microsoft mouse and keyboard.
Oh, yes.
Looking at that was I think it was a 15-inch TFT monitor back when they were called TFTs. I just turning into flight form and sitting on top of one of the mushrooms. It's like, this is it. This is it. And I need that staff from the dungeon.
The staff you never got.
Yeah. No, I farmed heroic slave pens, I think. Day in, day out for a staff. Never got it. Quit the game.
Yeah. I think it's that sort of thing where it's a lot of actually what Asmongold says. Because I may be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he like went super into Classic and then I think like sort of had like some, not issues with the Classic community, but I think he just got like a little bit burned out by doing the whole Classic endeavor. And a lot of what he said is like, look, those days have passed. You're never going to get them back. And like, I think Zach's like a few years older than us. Not too many more.
Yeah.
But certainly enough that whenever, he was, Asmongold was Asmongolding TBC back when TBC was TBC. He had that big experience in Classic. There are those of us who had, we had little snippets of TBC, little snippets of Classic. So for a player like maybe you and me, where we got bits of that, but not the full experience, and we're now way more WoW intelligent players. Night Stalker says he was born in 1990. Yeah, so he's 4 years older than me. Yep. For players like us, I think there's actually a unique power here where we got a little, we got our toes dipped in that stuff that made those expansions great. And we have a little bit of nostalgia for that that's going to propel us in there. But the actual full experience we never got.
Yeah.
And that means that there is still a big, fun, new to us World of Warcraft experience to have. Now, I know that I am totally okay with slower class gameplay because, for me, it's I really enjoy combat in Valheim. And it's not because combat in Valheim's great. It's because I'm doing meaningful goals via the combat system. So, when we were going through level 13, barely any mechanics, I was enjoying combat. And most of the combat, when we got stuck in the Harpies in the north of the Barrens, of course, that was before Northern Barrens was its own zone.
Oh, of course.
We were in there in that Harpy pit, getting our asses handed to us in this combat that regularly felt nail-biting. Yeah. Totally different to any of playing in Shadowlands, in the Maw, in the most dangerous part of the Jailer's home. No, I felt more thrills fighting a bunch of Harpies in WoW Classic, so I'm totally fine with that type of gameplay.
Auto-attacking as a bear druid and trying not to pull a single second Harpy was so much fun. I'm actually really annoyed remembering it because it's I wasn't doing anything. I was just watching the bear go, roar, roar, and that was it. But it was great.
Yeah, but while you were watching your bear do that, you're also watching your health bar being oh dear. In that situation where it's there's 7 seconds left in my heal, and I'm estimating I've got 6 seconds of health left. And that's just the type of thing that can only really happen with a combat system as slow and boring as those old ones. I think it still works. For sure. There's a bit of me that actually wonders, for players who would play the game the way that we would, could it actually be, especially because we have a guild, we have, when I put a 5-man group together, we can do that with good players who are good fun to play with. It almost gets to the stage where Classic TBC, I could see myself having more fun in Classic TBC than Modern, assuming the same group of people are the people that I'm playing with. And I think the reason why is that for me, stuff like grinding up all that anima to get the cosmetics and, it's a whole bunch of that's not working for me right now. But if I look here, it's there's vaguely meaningful goals for my character left, right, and center, and the whole thing's just this great big journey. So as somebody who has not experienced those TBC dungeons in context and most of the raids in context, to me it just seems that's a massive amount of content. It all seems pretty damn decent. I'm sure I've not watched both of Preach's, his big ranking, all of the WoW raids. I know Molten Core is the worst, and that's no surprise, but I know that the TBC raids are not all perfect. Far from it, probably, but yeah, I could actually see myself enjoying that more. And if I think about why, it's rating's rating. I'm fairly sure I would enjoy that form of rating for similar reasons to why I enjoy the current form of rating, so that's that. Dungeons. I liked Cataclysm Heroics. And while I respect the Mythic Plus system, I can totally see how a Theory Crafter type player is going to look at M Plus and be like, whoa, look at all this fun stuff to get my teeth into. Well, to me, I just prefer a dungeon that's slow and hard instead of, the difficulty coming from you trying to do it as fast as possible. So I think the gameplay styling of those TBC dungeons actually really appeals to me. So It's an interesting situation. And I say that sort of knowing there's a very low chance I'll be able to make that real. Because time is really hard.
Oh,
and the thing about the modern WoW is, yeah, I can raid log and keep my character roughly in a state where I can do heroic to get curve.
Yeah.
And I guess hope that 9.1 has got content outside of raid locking that I really want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's an interesting situation. I mean, I'm sure you could take a lot of what I just said out of context and use that to attack the modern game or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't mean it like that. This is like a purely personal thing.
Yeah, it's not like we're here screaming reject modernity, embrace tradition, but it's the kind of thing where they're very different games. Sometimes you want one, sometimes you want the other.
Yeah, it's like the version of me who would enjoy Destiny progression but want to play fast World of Warcraft.
Yes.
That's what Shadowlands is.
Mm-hmm.
The version of me that wants to play an MMORPG, I think there are older iterations of World of Warcraft, that I think includes TBC, also includes Mists of Pandaria, and Wrath of the Lich King that I think maybe would have suited that better for what I would want from the game.
For sure.
So, interesting. Interesting and mixed. WoW has got so many identities, so many people.
Yeah, I think that's the problem with it. It's the world.
Yeah.
That's why they can never seem to do everything right. They can do a lot of things right, but by doing those things right, they do a lot of things wrong, and then they can't flip flop, or else no one will play.
Yeah.
So they kind of they're damned if they do, damned if they don't, and they're just kind of going with what they want to do, which is entirely fair. It is a video game at the end of the day, and I think if we keep in mind and treat them like they are creative developers working on a creative product, I think they'll probably be happier for it and maybe make a better one.
Yeah,
hopefully.
And I'm now as this all develops, I'm beginning to think, and these sort of things are forming in my head. I'm beginning to think that for me the ideal situation would almost be Classic Plus. That is World of Warcraft. World of being the primary.
Of course.
I would rather have Classic Plus that was extremely focused on that. It was just 100%. This is the World of Warcraft. This is about the world. We're going to make it a little bit more sandboxy. A little bit more of that old school style. Support that old school role playing. Things like that. I'd almost rather have that and then modern WoW just decide on what it is. Mm-hmm. And maybe just double down on that and have a more honed in identity. Because at least that way, I could go to my modern WoW for that modern WoW stuff that admittedly is quite fun. Because, I think doing a Mythic +7 Sanguine Depths when we were a bit under-geared was a really fun gameplay-driven experience. Doing Sire Denathrius, a really fun gameplay-driven experience. But there is that World of bit that I don't really feel like I can engage in that much. And I think a lot of that's just because of, the gating of renown, the lack of reputations, those things that happened when we really moved from MOP to WoD and then WoD to Legion and what was lost sort of on the way. So I'd almost rather Modern WoW just decided, nah, feck it, we are Modern WoW, 100%, let's just double down on that identity. And then perhaps a Classic Plus that could really be focusing on the World of. Because when I see a lot of WoW Classic and TBC, to me, I'm not really thinking about the gameplay. I'm thinking about the World of Warcraft and the MMO RPG sort of bit. So it's interesting, the multiple identities of WoW.
Yeah, maybe. I don't see a world where it happening, but it's a case where just take the game, take a chisel, bang in the middle. Are you both happy now? That's the kind of thing that's like, obviously not, but at a really super basic level, that's how the dichotomy of classic and modern WoW seem to be shaping up, and it seems to work very well. So I think the further that goes, I think the better.
Yeah.
It's like Classic Plus is obviously a way to do that. I'd be interested to see. I really wish we had the two subgraphs for both.
Oh,
so we could overlay, because I could imagine when especially Wrath comes, I could imagine modern WoW losing a lot of players that are just nah, it's my time. This is it. I'm in for Wrath. This is the World of Warcraft I want. This is the one I'm going to play. I can just imagine them basically swapping on the graph, exactly then, and that's like maybe that's the way forward, is to, instead of having made up number 10 million subscribers in one game, just have 5 on both or 7 on both.
Yeah. It's it's like, would Blizzard be willing to put active development resources into making new content for a classic plus? It's like, who knows? I think it's a no-brainer biz-wise.
Of course.
A lot of people I've talked to think the same. So I'd say I'd hope they would do that. I doubt it. Don't have too many hopes. That's not actually what I mean. But yeah, if I hype everybody up for Classic Plus too much, then I'm just going to be creating disappointment, I guess. So I don't want to do that too much. So, that's basically it for the news. There's not a whole bunch else to talk about. It was a relatively slow week. Now, there were some other minor things. One thing we could talk about is Windwalkers. There's
yes, we have. I actually had this prepared, but I figured it might be a bit too aggro. This is the sort it here. This is bugwalker.io, which is someone made a bug tracker. I believe it was initially intended to take the piss, but just a bug tracker for Windwalker because they have so many that last for so long. Let's see.
So if we can filter that.
There we go.
I think we can filter at the top to Windwalker. Oh, no, that's just severity.
Oh, yeah, okay, so there's Windwalker. There's 21 bugs, of which... What's that? Okay, only one critical bug survived. I think they removed another one, but there's Windwalking Ore does not stack with the speed effects. That's cool. Let's look at the worst, actually. Okay, here we go.
Roll or Whirling Dragon Punch, as knock effects happen, will sometimes cause roll to cease working until you reload or time out.
Yep. Imagine... Okay, I don't know if this is new to 9.0.5. I believe it is. But could you imagine, because we had a monk tank for our Denathrius kill, and roll was vital. Roll and Transcendence were vital for that boss's positioning to be correct. Imagine if he was
our
just like...
window's frozen.
Is it? Okay, cool.
Yeah. Our window is frozen on Valor. How long has it been frozen on Valor for? Uh-oh.
Cool. Technical difficulties, I see.
Yeah, must
Very
be.
good.
Technical difficulties coming up. That's pretty banter. So is the screen share... No, we're not frozen. But the screen share is.
Yeah, so it's on...
Because you can see in that camera what we're actually looking at.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we'll just swap to that for now. It'll do.
That's it. Zoom in, drag in really big.
Yeah, so... it's if you want to follow along at home, it's bugwalker.io. That is bug tracker for all the nightmare stuff that happened in Monks of the Minute. Some of it is I was checking this earlier before stream, and some of them have been resolved, but they haven't been removed yet. So it's not all bad. But it's a case for things like if you get knocked back during roll or Whirling Dragon Punch, roll stops working. That's just a bug.
Nice.
Yeah, the critical stuff. Okay, I think this one wasn't true. There's one here that says Celestial Brew sometimes doesn't absorb damage, but I'm pretty sure that one... that was actually from an old BFA bug with an Azerite trait. So that's not... Yeah, that's not too bad, but...
I think like another part of this, and I need to check the most recent rankings on Raider.io, which I guess we can't really do because our screen share has decided to just be stuck. So that's very bizarre, but screw that. Yeah. And God, what was I going to... I've totally forgotten what I was going to say. Epic. Bugs. Yes. They had loads of bugs that actually gave them more DPS.
Yep.
And those bugs are fixed, and that's good. Yep. The more Storm, Earth, Fire bugs that are fixed, the better. It can just have the unfortunate side effect of their damage goes down. Nothing else replaces that. That's an issue for them.
Yeah, Storm, Earth, and Fire's interactions have been destroyed since it was added in 5.2, I think, and like more added over time and not removed. So they're kind of juggling bugs in a sense. But there's also what was the one I was reading about earlier? The new talent. Dance of TG, the one that gives him for Windwalker specifically, that gives him the free proc spinning crane kick. That is supposed to increase damage by 200% of Spinning Crane Kick. It's just flat damage instead, which means it doesn't scale with gear in any capacity. They kind of didn't notice this for a while because it was like so similar, but as soon as gear went, like, why is this talent not doing what it should? I thought, yeah, they've reported the bug, but I guess whatever's going on with this nightmare class, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, it's so weird. Like, I always thought that Windwalker had such potential. And it just feels like it's always been so close, and it's just never really gotten enough love. But then you think from Blizzard's perspective, and you look at, you know, the amount of players that, you know, the class populations.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure Monk is consistently very low. I would imagine very different once you get into like Mythic Plus communities where, you know, you want your brewmasters and stuff. But I know they've struggled in terms of player population for ages.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of factors where they're the least fitting to the overall Warcraft fantasy because they were so significantly focused on the Pandaren or the Pandaria stuff, whereas DKs are a little bit more active because everyone obviously loves Arthas. Everyone knows what a DK is.
100%.
People don't know Brewmasters very well unless they did the founding of Durotar in Warcraft 3 and played as Chen for a while. But they're just between bugs, interesting design that sometimes works really well, sometimes doesn't. They're kind of left out of it, even with their Mystic Touch, which is extremely useful.
Yeah, it's that kind of thing where, honestly, a lot of people are going to say, for the next expansion, that they want a new class.
Yeah.
Because we've not had one since Legion, and a lot of people expect, you know, sort of, oh yeah, every 2 expansions we get a new class, something like that, right? You know, you got a Classic, 2 expansions later, you get your DK, 2 expansions later, you get your Monk, 2 expansions later, we got the Legion changes.
Demon Hunter,
and, you know, the Demon Hunter, and okay, cool, and 2 expansions later, where's the new one? To me, it kind of feels like, sure, give us a new class in the next patch, but can you do that and not bite off more than you can chew? It's like in a world where all these, you know, okay, some of those aren't real, but in a world where like the launch monk exists and monks have had the bugs that monks have had for so long, and you know, you can still get DC'd by a fell rush. I think less now than
they've
in the past.
Significantly fixed that since Legion.
Yeah,
it is. You're much less likely to die DC or lose access to your character for a couple hours whenever you're playing a Demon Hunter.
Okay. I mean, even as a hunter, I've had DCs on doing misdirections during this expansion.
Oh yeah,
not misdirections. No, disengages.
Yeah,
I've had DCs and disengages, but it's. So that's movement-based class bugs, but I mean, where Storm Earth and Fire has been broken for so long, and where, I don't know, Guardian Druids are still the most boring thing in the universe. Sorry, Guardians. It's like, just in a world where those class issues exist, I'm kind of thinking, we need to shore up the current things. Would it be too much if we got another class? That said, if they do go and tell us they're doing a new hero class, I would be excited for that.
No, I'd be over the moon if they can get something that's like new and fresh. Because Demon Hunter, say all you want about like how simple its basic design is. Whenever it was packed full of legendaries in Legion and artifact traits, and then whenever like now actually a little bit more so when it's in maybe not the best to play, but it's got enough tools and toys to play with. Now that I actually think that compared to BFA especially, it is significantly more interesting. So if they can do something, if they can do a new class and not make it as boring as Demon Hunter kind of is sometimes, and not give it only 2 specs, which I think makes sense but feels a bit budget.
Yeah.
And if they can avoid doing with Monk, where they go, this is unequivocally the best class in the game, but it never works. Sorry.
Yeah. I guess then I'd wonder, like, what could they do in terms of a new hero class?
Ooh.
Because, like, people have been talking about Blade Master as an example, but you're like, Blade Master is an arms warrior.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be an arms warrior that's got more of, like, a sort of samurai, like, vibe, inspiration, kind of like some of the Blade Master orcs.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I guess you could sort of make some sort of, like, some sort of Eastern weaponed class, because the monk is like, you know, your your sort of handheld martial arts mostly. I mean, you do have a big old bonking stick as a brewmaster, but it is, you know, sort of mostly hand to hand is the vibe.
Yes.
Right. So, you know, you could get some sort of like I don't know, a katana wielding class. You know, I think maybe of at least in a bunch of like Chinese action movies and stuff, they really seem to like doing big pole arm based things. So, you know, could you have a class that maybe it's 3 specs, like one of them is ninja and it's like actually full ninja. You know, the other one is like a big sort of pole arm, almost Dynasty Warriors feeling kind of vibe. Your other one is like a katana, so it's like very, you know, Arms Warrior is like a big medieval knight. Maybe feels like a, you know, like a samurai or something. So, you know, that's maybe a way the Blade Master could actually work, even though I brought it up to say that it wouldn't work because of Arms Warrior. No, you could make a Blade Master work. I mean, you know, it's like, what else is there though? There's Bard.
Bard would be an interesting one, but the support angle of that is so interesting. It's like, I don't think they ever want to play around with it, just because it feels like such a step out of the ordinary, like such an experiment for them to run with, like, even power infusion. People are up in arms with power infusion. I mean, to be fair, it's huge, and it's poisoning so many conversations. And then Fae Guardians, now that they've helped that out, it's now, okay, priests are now significantly more supporty, but that has all these problems that kind of don't really, like, if they go for a support class that feels meaningful in all situations, it needs to have big support.
Yeah.
Which is going to run into problems whenever you can, you know, the best player in your group is a Windwalker monk. They've had some bugs fixed. They've got good gear. You're giving them 30% extra damage from a you're giving them whatever from a power infusion. You're giving them Fae Guardians. You've got 2 bards in there cycling buffs. It's a kind of thing where that would be super interesting, but I think it is too many. It does too much damage to the meta, I think.
Yeah.
Even though it would be really, really cool. And I love playing a Bard in FF14.
Yeah. Well, Kevin in chat actually says, not Kevin, it's Eogard, says that Final Fantasy apparently has been struggling with the Bard for a long time. So
Bard's been struggling as a Bard. Bard is, because it starts off as the Archer class, it's mostly focused on the Archer gameplay. And then the songs that you like cycle through as you play are very weak. The support nature of them is kind of, oh, I feel like I'm helping out a little bit by giving this, but it's not a massive deal. It's not really game changing enough. I believe that you would want to take one over a better performing class.
Yeah.
And then stuff like one of the big problems I believe some players have with Dragoon at the minute is it has a single target buff to it. It basically, I can't remember what it's called, but it picks a partner. And that partner in melee, they'll give each other bonus damage, but that's implemented in a really weird way. And then Dancer gives a single target extra damage, and that's kind of busted as well. So it's like, in an MMO scenario where metagame is important, you have all of these problems with giving other players more juice to play with that you kind of have to be super delicate with, or just, I mean, you've got 2 options. You can either make the game balanced or try to make it balanced, or you can have like every class gets retribution or something like that.
Yeah. I guess it's that thing with metas where, you know, WoW players will be incredibly good at sucking all of the fun and ruining the enjoyment of World of Warcraft. But sort of because they're incentivized to do so by the game mechanics. So it is that really tricky thing, and you've always got to take that into account when you're doing new classes. One thing I actually would like to do is go through Guild Wars 2's classes. Now, it is a bit different, but the reason I bring it up is because they're really thematically kind of cool and different, I guess, in how they like style like their mages and just a mage.
Yeah.
And I'd wonder if there's like some inspirations there. And there's a very obvious one that World of Warcraft could just take as a new class. So like what they've got is, you know, they've got Mesmer. And a Mesmer is kind of like all, you know, illusion magic.
Yes.
It's kind of Doctor Strange stuff. I guess that's something World of Warcraft actually doesn't do. It doesn't really have illusion magic as a thing that's like the core of what a class does.
Yeah, you've got mages with mirror image and invisibility. That's about the height of it.
Just about it, yeah. So, you know, the Mesmer in Guild Wars 2, you could probably get some inspirations from there. The other ones, I mean, you've got Guardian and Ranger. I mean, yeah, we get it. Necromancer, there's a lot of people who, would like that with the undead theme, but DK kind of covers that.
Yeah.
Or Demo kind of covers that. There's Warrior, boring Warrior. Elementalist is like their, I guess, a different sort of way of doing a shaman that's kind of neat. They've got Thief, it's like their Rogue. They've got Engineer. That's something WoW doesn't have.
That's what we'll, I think, desperately needs so bad.
So what the Engineer is doing, and I've played an Engineer to like level 30 or 40 in Guild Wars 2, ages ago, mind you. But yeah, the Engineer, like, you can place turrets. Turrets will do stuff, you can do quite a lot of really cool stuff as an Engineer. So some sort of Tinkerer class in World of Warcraft, Engineer, something like that, I think would be a really, really good fit. Then there are other classes, the Revenant, which is, again, it's like, I like the way they've got, Revenant, Elementalist, Mesmer. It's like they're kind of these real cool different angles on existing classes. So there may be a way that Blizzard could do that and actually have it work. I mean, Guild Wars 2 manages to have a class called a Guardian and and a Warrior, and I don't really think they have that like sort of complete Paladin vibe in the way that WoW does.
Yeah.
But like they're still able to do like your Warrior and your Guardian, make them feel different. So I'd wonder what Blizzard could do, like adding in a new hero class to the game.
I think the two things that come to mind that I see people talk about the most that are like actually could be solid ideas would be the time-based mage as a healer. Bit awkward in some ways, but Arcane can play with time, and all mages do is alter time and time warp. There's so much more that can be done with that idea as a whole, especially if you want to do a expansion focused on the bronze and the infinite. You're like, all right, here's a load of bronze infinite. Here's, Chromie's a major character of this expansion. So she trained up a bunch of mages to be time-based mages. Obviously that falls under Arcane, but, super focused on accelerating like existing dots on a target, or something along those lines, and adding reversals, things like that. And the other one is, just remembered one more that'll get into first, tank shaman based on Earth, because I know my friend Dickie would absolutely main tank like crazy if he was allowed to play tank as a shaman. He's been talking about it since when was the first time he tried? I believe it was in Ulduar he tanked a boss, a shaman. God knows how he managed it, but but he did. So I think like an earth-based tank shaman. These are kind of additional specs as opposed to classes, but you can see how they could be like kind of brought into it all. But I think the major one is the Tinker, the Engineer, because it just playing a gnome Tinker that drops. You could go the full. Oh my God, what's his name? The king of the gnomes.
Oh, Mekatork.
Mekatork. I was thinking Mecha gnome. No, he's not. But Mekatork, I think you could go full Mekatork boss. Tinker gets itself into a suit. Does that? You could go that route, or you could go the throwing down a bunch of like totem turrets or explosives, all that kind of stuff. A bit of overlap. But I think, like, in terms of fantasy, that fits super well in World of Warcraft already. And I think that's, like, the major one that I imagine they've had hundreds of discussions about it internally and are just waiting on the right time for that, because that would be sick.
Yeah, almost certainly. I think that's really good. That's our segment of potential new classes for World of Warcraft done. Why not do a segment on that? It's fun. Speaking of segments, time for another one. It is time for Control the Show, where you control the show via your super chats. And while we were doing the news, we got many super chats. Good. A big thank you to everybody, and that means there are things to talk about. So we've got one from David Granger. It is one of quite a few. Thank you, David. That is, imagine if Chromie had a mission to travel with her, and you get dropped or lost in old world content or instance and have to quest through to escape. Which I really bring that super chat up to just say that there's a potential for Chromie to be used to do whatever the hell Blizzard wants.
Yeah.
Now, what David said there is basically a Caverns of Time dungeon. Chromie drops you into a scenario. So solo Caverns of Time scenarios, that could be a really cool thing, especially in a world where maybe we want some cool things to collect, some hard content to do in a solo fashion, revisit cool events from the WoW novels, things that happened in Chronicle. That could be extremely cool. And because it's time walking, you could do it using old assets. Doesn't matter that it's an old busted house from vanilla. It makes sense in context. So I would really then expand that to basically just say Caverns of Time is awesome. The concept, the idea.
Yeah. Not the Black Morass. Not the Black
Morass. No, we have time walking. I've time walked too much Black Morass, and maybe that will be a low point of me returning to play TBC Classic. But just the idea that the Caverns of Time exists. Now, the last time they used it was the 15th anniversary event, and while it was very frustrating to deal with the defile mechanic after dance and defile. Sometimes players are they're stupid. They're just stupid and they can't listen to what people say in chat. God damn it. Okay, look, we've all been there, but it was a fun event and the Caverns of Time is awesome. I think so many of us remember picking up World of Warcraft in a shop when we got our games physically. We had to go outside to get our video games. Pretty insane.
I got mine in Argos. I actually remember leaving the shop with it in my hand.
Yeah, I got mine in game.
Nice.
But the thing was, you looked at the back of TBC, and one of the back of the box features was the Caverns of Time. And it almost immediately seemed like the coolest thing ever. And people love the WoW lore, right? It's so much of what we do in the channel. It's big stuff, the WoW lore. Caverns of Time is just the perfect opportunity for Blizzard to, in a way that is completely divorced from modern events in the game, revisit and do cool things. We could just have the B plot of the next while, or maybe the C plot. Something where Chromie's just like, hey, the timelines or the time streams are getting really weird again. So I've got this stuff for you to do, every once in a while. And maybe that could lead up to some crazy, the old gods and the infinites all come back and it's craziness again. Yeah. But just the idea that the Caverns of Time is like sitting there, that we could go back and go to all of these crazy cool events that have happened in the real-time strategy games and all of that stuff. I mean, Warcraft 2, Beyond the Dark Portal. Do some of that stuff time walking.
Yeah, if we could get some content in the Caverns of Time that actually tells people about Illyria and Trallian's journey and expands on that, especially if we're trying to get Trallian characterized for the upcoming Light expansion, all you got to do is give us half an hour with him in a scenario and then a dungeon with a minute, have him fight, etc. That would be
okay.
Sick.
Here's your vague plot line. The Infinite Dragons are trying to mess up Illyria and Trallian. And the drama there is they're trying to mess up Trallian. Why? The Void whispers to Illyria like she could be its ally. Why are they trying to mess the two of them up? You can have some really intriguing plot lines there. And via following those two characters, you get Warcraft 2. You get Beyond the Dark Portal. I mean, even just things we've... some of the events from around the era of the Warcraft movie, of course, played out differently in War 1. But, go into the first Karazhan to kill Medivh with Lane and co.
Oh, please, yes, I love that book so much.
Yeah, I mean, man, that is how to make some money, Blizz. Totally. So, yeah, Caverns of Time. Let's go. Chromie's already half-saved World of Warcraft. Let's get her to do it again. So... Next super chat comes from Thomas, who says, lore question. Do you think the Night Elves will get some Can I speak? We'll do that one again. From Thomas, who says, lore question. Do you think the Night Elves will get some retribution for BFA's events, or will they remain the WoW underdogs and constantly be bullied by the Horde? I actually think, pretty simple, they're going to get a big reckoning. I have a slight suspicion that it's going to be in the form of some crazy cinematic that happens at the end of the raid, because we know the Tyrande, when we last saw her, and you won't have seen this unless you're a Night Fae, but we quest a little bit with, and I was just Lady Shootbow. Chandris, yes.
Chandris
Featherman. We quest with Chandris, and we find Taronda, and she's like, you saved the Night Elf people. I'm gonna go kill Sylvanas. And she, zoops away, running at this preposterous speed. So she's up in Torghast, in the Sanctum of Domination. We hear the Sanctum of Domination is, it's the jailer's pad, right? So that's where she's headed. That's where we're headed. Yes, I think the Night Elves are going to get their vengeance. I do wonder was that, when the fall of night, her face will be revealed, like you could very much say that's based in Sylvanas. I mean, the fall of night, as you literally in the cinematic see the clouds roll over as Sylvanas starts her plan to capture all the people. There could be another interpretation of that it's got something to do with Taronda. But, or, even when the arrow finds its mark, the last fetter will fall away. Like, could that actually be Taronda's arrow finding its mark on Sylvanas? I mean, who the hell knows, basically. Point is, there's going to be humongous Night Elf business in this next patch, based on the narrative that's been set up so far. At least I think so anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you've got the perfect situation to... You've got the perfect situation there because obviously Tyrande and Anduin left on bad terms.
Yeah.
Basically last time they were encountered. Anduin's almost certainly going to be there. Sylvanas is obviously going to be there. We're going to fight her. Tyrande's probably there. So I think we will have in one big either triumphant or calamitous moment for each of these characters. We will see... I don't think all of them will be resolved, but I think a significant amount of the Sylvanas and Tyrande stuff will be completely crossed off with that. It'll just be here's what's happening. Be that Tyrande killing Sylvanas or finding it in her heart after the Night Warrior power leaves her for a second to forgive her, which would probably not make people happy, but
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. I think they'll fix up the character arc with those characters. They've already fixed up the fate of the Night Elves who died. They go to Ardenweald. They just get integrated into the forest and the ecology of the place. The next thing they need to do, though, is the fate of the Night Elves. And yes. I remember it was asked at one of the interviews or Q&As from BlizzCon. Just that. Will we get a new Teldrassil? Will there be a new Night Elf home? And they basically said, well, we're hesitant to just give them their tree back and reset the plot line, right? Because I could sort of see that point. It would end up a bit like a sitcom, now the Night Elves are back to being Night Elves. But at the same rate, I don't think the Night Elves can just be vagrants, bunking up with, bunking up in Stormwind forever. No, I think the Night Elves do need a future as a people, and I think that's something where Blizzard needs to remember that it's very good to step back from telling small character stories and to tell large epic arcs, the story of a people. Because I think that's the sort of story that makes you feel like you're living in a world and not just like playing an esport and then getting a cinematic on YouTube that contextualizes the art assets of the esport you're playing.
Yeah.
Which is at its worst how WoW can feel sometimes.
Yeah. I think I have a vague idea of where they're going to go with it. Just because I'd sort of all the lines came together in my head. Because Teldrassil's gone. The Night Elves are all dancing about. I was trying to think of other world trees. Obviously up in Northrend's a no-go. More or less, because that was where Il'gynoth... Was that where Il'gynoth or first found the roots? Oh, where Yogg led in. Down in Ungoro is probably a no-go because it's in Ungoro. No one wants to go there. I can't remember where the other actual world tree is, but just Gilneas. That's it. There's nowhere that makes sense for them.
Yeah.
So they'll just rebuild Gilneas, and the Worgen will finally pay back their debt, and everyone will be like, okay. Then it won't just literally be, hello, we've restored Gilneas to how it was like in the invasion scenario, and dotted Night Elf NPCs. They've got enough forest around there, especially when they come to the kind of taking back. Because, Gilneas, go up north, Silverpine, with Forsaken, without the Undercity, that area could end up being the ultimate home of the Night Elves.
That's
It's a bit
interesting.
weird, but I think that's most of my reasoning is it would work, and it would cross off a lot on the list of things to resolve.
I agree it would tie that all up neatly
Yeah.
in a bow. I also don't want it to happen like that because I think the Night Elves have got to live in Kalimdor.
Same.
That's their home. They've
Yeah,
got to
same.
live in Kalimdor. I don't know if it means they build a big new city in Ashenvale or something like that. I mean, it's obvious that Teldrassil's screwed. And this whole planting new world trees that
Yeah.
Fandral Staghelm did is a bit of a dead end.
Yeah, I mean, if
But they
Fandrel's-
need something.
Yeah, if Fandral and Illidan are trying to grow trees around the place as well of Eternity Waters, maybe you shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this all kind of comes into what my personal, if I could like have one thing for WoW, would almost be, and I would like the next expansion to just be, I mean, I don't know. World of Warcraft Peoples of Azeroth is a very boring, dry name, so we couldn't go for that. But my actual personal ideal for that would be an expansion that would... You know what? Would it even take us to level 60, or is this the expansion where we'd actually kill leveling at cap and move to a new system where every new zone is a Suramar?
Brave.
I think that's a different discussion for a different time.
For sure.
But in my head, what's ideal is World of Warcraft, Peoples of Azeroth, or something where basically it's this situation where we've saved Azeroth from death. The Cataclysm was over a decade ago. It is now time for an expansion that, you know, sure, it can have its big villains in the way that, you know, Vanilla had its villains, but they were just sort of dotted about the place and natural in the world. What I would like to see, and this is big business, but at the end of the day, you know, as Connell actually corrected us on, there are 8 studios that work in Call of Duty. 8 studios, that's a lot. So... I mean, money ain't a problem for Activision Blizzard,
Yep.
the most valuable stock in gaming by quite some margin. You know, it's no issue for them. I would like to see a revamp of Azeroth, and not a revamp that is based on a big cataclysmic event, such as the Cataclysm. No, because that aged instantly when the Cataclysm was no longer relevant. Right, so now you're going through 11, you're like, well, what's all this Cataclysm business? I'm so confused. And then we need Chromie to come in and fix it all. What I would like to see is, you know, maybe all that stuff just exists as it is. I'd actually just like to see, you know, every zone's brought up to what it is in the World of Warcraft. You know, every zone is what you actually see at max level is like the canonical version of that zone. You know, I want to see how has Westfall developed? How has Gilneas developed? How have all these places developed based on what's happened to them? And is there some way we could, you know, actually just get a full expansion's worth of our raids and our dungeons and our PvP, but then also just have the entire focus be to make Azeroth a rich, beautiful world? That's what I'd like. That's a big tangent, though, but it is what I'd like.
It's a big tangent and a very, very big idea that would be extremely expensive and difficult to actually implement and probably a hard sell, but I've actually figured out how to do it. So, you called it World of Warcraft Peoples of Azeroth. You're thinking both too big and too small at the same time. You just call it World of Warcraft.
Oh yeah, World of Warcraft 2 would be that
No, well,
feeling.
yeah, you just say, this is just this next product's called World of Warcraft. Everyone's confused. Everyone's confused. No one knows how it works. All the PR stuff is wrecked and destroyed. But it doesn't matter because everyone, like, people will be like, "What's this? World of Warcraft?" They're like, "All right."
Yeah, it's like Apple being like, hey, the successor to the iPad 3 is called iPad.
Yeah.
And everyone's confused.
Yeah, and then that sets us up for World of Warcraft Azeroth, where we have a renewed planet, and then we can see the actual character after that.
Yeah. I actually just want that whole... I want to defeat death, and then I just want to reset. And I actually want, you know, what Blizzard tried to do with Mists of Pandaria was take us to this slower, more thoughtful journey that was full of world building and a rich history and a lived world.
I miss it so
And
much.
I feel like since then, you know, we've moved from that to, you know, a bit more Michael Bay. You know, things are shorter. They are more expensive feeling or looking, you know, with their big cinematics and stuff. But sometimes, you know, it feels like an episode of EastEnders, where it's like, this isn't World of Warcraft anymore. This is the story of a small cast of characters. So what I'd really like to see is an expansion that is, really being the World of Warcraft. Like Varian Wryn was just a dude who was missing for, vanilla and stuff. Bolvar, he was just the regent. You'd go and talk to him from time to time, but he wasn't. Same for Thrall.
Mm-hmm.
Thrall was not an active dude in vanilla. And I actually think that's good.
Yeah, he was too busy, being the political leader of the entire horde, trying to solve all the paperwork for all the problems.
Yeah.
Whereas we were out boots on the ground, actually killing stuff to get the problem solved.
Yeah, Thrall's sitting there thinking about, taxation, potholes, sewage system, Vorgrimmar.
Oh, dude.
I don't want to think about that. That's all the boring stuff, because he's the leader. That's what he's got to do. Yeah, I'd love something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So moving on. Another question from David, who basically asked, how different would soulbinds be if you took your soulbind into Torghast as a compatriot and you strengthen your bond with them by enduring through trials together? And what I'm going to say is, I'm not necessarily super focused on that in a Torghast context, but I think the idea of, your soulbinds being these characters that you can go out into the world and do stuff with, I think that's way better. Personally, I think what this Shadowlands soulbind system really would have needed to have actually been experientially successful and live up to the name of Soulbind. I mean, Soulbind. That's more hardcore than marriage. Marriage is, you got you set up your stuff and you're married. But Soulbind? God damn, that's big implications. We're binding our souls. But why do I feel less connected to my Soulbind than I did to some of my champions from my garrison mission table in Warlords of Draenor, where, in that mission table, I got to go and do a little quest line with those characters, and I could bring the bodyguard characters, I could bring them out in the world with me. They'd actually be useful in that world.
They had abilities.
Yeah.
That you pressed. But I think it's, the answer there is time and budget constraints, because I just thought it would tie a lot of the problems I think you have with Shadowlands and a lot of your solutions to problems being, the reps. So imagine this. Instead of, or maybe in addition to Venari, you have your 3 soulbinds chilling out after you unlock them. And you go, right, you're with me. Do stuff with them. Do whatever content that's solo. Upgrade rep with them slowly but surely. And then they have unique quests. Because here's the thing that bugged me the most about them. Remember when you actually soulbind for the first time? And it was like, oh, this is a big process. And as soon as you're done, they're like, whoa, you've lived such a life. You've been in 500 wars. That's how you've saved the world a million times. You've killed gods. That's such a life. And your character's like, I don't know what any of my soulbinds have done. I've heard a little bit here and there. I've heard well, obviously there's dialogue from Pelagos. There's a couple of bits in the memory world quest from them, but it's like, my character canonically knows everything that all of these characters have been through in their entire life, and I don't know any of it. So if I could go on a quest with them, at the end of the quest, I see a flashback from their life, so I understand what's happening. Then all of a sudden, I need to spend time with them. I need to know. I need to feel soulbound to them. Not that my character's soulbound to them. That's, I guess, the important part there.
So if I was to transform this into a feature request, or just to say something I'd like to see, maybe in patch 9.2, but a system where each soulbind has, got from, neutral to exalted doesn't make sense with someone you soulbound with.
Yeah.
The same thing. That basically is a bit like an old school rep. They could be different for each soulbind and whatever way makes sense for that character. And give us a way to actually go and quest with these guys. Bring them out in the world with us, and let's go. Let's actually make them good characters that we care about. Because right now it ain't going to happen. So I think that's that one. Moving on then, we've got another question from David Granger, who says, do you guys think Blizzard could be convinced to let us earn domination keys to raid Zoval's vault, like Troves of the Thunder King? Thoughts and opinions on this, maybe for robbing the brokers. To which I say, I think that if you said, would that be a cool, fun thing to just about any developer in Blizzard, they would say, yes, I think that would be a cool, fun thing. Trove of the Thunder King was really, really cool. This is all great. but time and budget constraints, which is just that thing that's always going to come up. So yeah, what I'll say to that is, Trove the Thunder King was at its time one of the most interesting. It was interesting. It was creative. It was something totally new. We hadn't seen that before, and that was in the same patch that gave us Green Fire. I mean, creativity was sparking. Can you believe that patch gave us Big Island that you advance through over time? Big raid, at the time one of the best we'd seen. Such a great raid. The Isle of Giants, with all of its Isle of Giants stuff, and Undasta, and also the Trove, and also the storyline with all of those scenarios. My God, they made so much content for that patch.
And also one more thing, the Thunderforged, the Lightning Steel ingots. The entire blacksmithing system from that patch, where you actually had to go to the island and unlock the forge to get it started, was just really cool.
How did they make all that content?
They had a lot of developers and time, I think.
But Matt, they've got more developers now than they did then.
I don't want to answer that question because it's not a very nice answer. I think the diplomatic version of the answer is they may be paralyzed in content creation and decision making from higher level parts of the organization.
That's a good diplomatic answer. So, yes, David, to answer your question, the likes of Trove of the Thunder King, I would think absolutely awesome. Let's do it. Absolutely great. But it is almost certainly not going to happen, and there's no way it could happen because it's not been announced, and they would not have time to make a scratch, I think. So, moving on to our next question, which also comes from David. I love Mythic Plus. I love time walking. Imagine if Blizzard made time walking vanilla Mythic Plus dungeons. Imagine Blackrock depths scaled with affixes to compensate for the mechanics of Old World. No. I can totally see why somebody would like to do that.
Yeah.
And it actually could be that what's really there is a desire for a bit more difficulty and challenge and menace from that content. And I think that's just the sort of thing where time walking doesn't really give you that much.
Yeah, it's a case where time walking is designed as kind of parallel to LFR and normal dungeons as the touristy kind of mode or a first step in progression, as opposed to an actual part of the experience. I feel like there is no way without a lot of their dungeon designers and balance staff sitting around looking at BRD being like, oh, how are we going to make this work with affixes? It's never going to happen. It would take them, I don't know how long to actually get that sorted. So I don't think it's likely. But the idea of, hello, this system is good. I like doing content that's at a difficulty. Can I do the old stuff? Because it's not difficult anymore and it never will be again. Just having that little, can we have a new, can we just have a mythic version of it maybe sometime?
Yeah, a mythic zero time walking. I think that would be cool.
I think that's basically the solution there, kind of.
Okay, cool. Mythic time walking. Let's go. I mean, if it's all based on scaling anyway, let's just get the armor, go crank it up a little bit.
Yeah, throw some bonus mechanics in there if you're feeling really spicy.
Yeah. So there's that. Now, next up, we have a question from Martin who says, all Valor led to is now people ask for eye level 200 and Raider IO checks in freaking +4s. Annoying for us casuals, to put it mildly. Yeah, I mean, I do not play in pugs for a very good reason. I've always taken the view that my time is worth too much to me as a human in the world to be sitting there getting into a group and it's a bunch of pugs and it falls apart halfway through, it's just not at all something that's interesting to me. I remember, I think it was Preach, I was like maybe in Legion, he did his, it was almost like a secret shopper thing, where, he made a character, and after every video on that character, he changed the character's name so people wouldn't know who it was. And that was basically just Mike's delving into the hellscape that is having to pog World of Warcraft, and it seems awful.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I remember that well, because I did almost the same on the same class as he did. By coincidence, around the same time, I was doing it on a Aflock. I think he was Aflock as well, and it was just... I believe he started that series with the intent of saying, hey, you don't need a group to be good at the game. you can actually prove through skill at this point of the game. This was at 7.2, 7.3, I think. You can just be good, and if you're consistently top of the damage meters, you consistently do the mechanics. If you know what you're doing, then you'll get invited to groups. You'll have a good time, and I think he was like mostly sort of right, but I think something broke in him that day, during that adventure.
The texture he encountered along the way, for that journey.
That was mostly it. He didn't seem the same, and ever since then, I know he's been talking about never, like, don't play the game in pugs, never do it.
Yeah, I would just flat out say that if you're a gameplay oriented player, I do not recommend playing World of Warcraft if without a pug.
Yeah,
I don't. I think it is I basically think it's a subpar experience in so many ways, and that absolutely rule number one or thing number one should be get a guild, find a community. There's people in our guild who are new, and they were recruited by our recruiter, recruiting people. They join the guild. They're a bit quiet in night one, right? But, you fast forward 4 weeks, everyone's bantering together. Mm-hmm. It's pretty easy. You just have to stick at it, because sometimes you can find, a pack of dickheads, right? Like, it's weird. Now, going to the actual question, I mean, yeah, it is unfortunate that what is mathematically, meta speaking, perfectly the best for the best players in the game then just has all those things where it is absolutely what they should be doing for efficiency, but there are negative externalities to that that impact the casual players. I basically think that to a degree it's unavoidable, and that it's just to do with metas, and that ultimately Blizzard's goal should be getting people to play together in groups where there needs to be a punishment, a downside for being bad at the game, being a dickhead.
Yeah.
You have to be able to do a dungeon in the context of doing more dungeons with that same group of people, because that is one of the only things that will actually give an individual player the various different incentives to be a social team player, to be good at the game, to do research, to want to grow, because if you are playing with other people and they can see you grow and move up the damage meter, that's all very good. And that can't really happen in pugs. So it's just tricky, because the more that you support the pre-made group finder, in a way for Blizzard, the more like you're enabling people to play now, but actually damaging the health of the game in another way, or undermining aspect.
Yeah, no, I don't know if there's a way out of the fact that everyone's using Raider IO and item level as a check, but it's a thing where people are goals oriented in pugs, and the goal they're looking for, what they're seeking, is as fast a completion as possible. Because I know I'm guilty of the same. If I'm doing like those 4 mythic zeros for the weekly quest, in my head I'm going, okay, well, I want to do like I'll do 4 different ones instead of the same 4 or the same one, but maybe I'll do like Sanguine Depths maybe 2 or 3 times if I get a good group. And that's going to be me going, okay, well, that's likely to be event there. I'll pick that. Well above 200 item level. That person's got like 215. They're going to wreck this. And it's because item level just translates to my experience is better that way. I have no incentive to take someone with lower gear. And that's because like there's a social incentive to solve that, which is that person finds friends who are higher geared or the same gear they can do it together on. And the other incentive, which I absolutely do not hope they ever think about, is basically giving you an incentive in game to boost. I hope that's never a thing. That would be a nightmare. But there's no solution, because it's almost like a societal and cultural problem that's just been being, I guess, expressed through the pre-made group finder, where it's all just it's nameless, faceless. People are ships passing in the night kind of thing.
Yeah,
it's unfortunate, but
so to keep everything going with Control the Show. You guys control the show, which, by the way, we are going to wrap up after pretty much after the current super chats. So we're running on a little bit. Yes, we totally said we'd try to condense the show, make it about 90 minutes. It was a better viewing experience. And oh dear, we've now rambled for probably a long time.
Yeah, 2.5 hours.
But yeah, right, let's roll. So we have got another question from David Granger, who essentially is asking, for a support talent tree for the Death Knights. His idea is that, using necromancy and rituals to sort of animate and buff up your team as they lose health, link yourself to your friends so that if they die, they can come back as ghouls. Basically, really, cool, sort of fantastical, flavorful things that I think just highlight how developing in the context of a game like WoW, where there's a whole bunch of competitive elements, is really damn hard. Because you could almost see the original DK coming out like what he says, or a vanilla class coming out like what he says. But the thing then is, if you actually look at vanilla classes, there's a bunch of cool ideas, neat interactions, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, there's so many dead specs that had cool ideas and stuff like that. It's just they didn't really work in reality. And that's the tricky thing, where if you're doing a single-player game or an action RPG like a Diablo, it's kind of easier to do that stuff.
Yeah, if you're team building in like something like Divinity, you can have, like, if you can mix and match classes all the time and you want to do what you want, then you can have all of that weird stuff. But in the context of an MMO where everyone's playing competitively, or not everyone's playing competitively, but there are people who will play competitively, that stuff kind of doesn't work. And I will always, I think as long as I live, I will be sore about this specific point. But I remember feeling a little bit hamstrung as a druid for, I think, until maybe Mists, maybe Warlords, because I felt like I was losing out on my throughput for being a hybrid.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, obviously you're going to do less damage because you can off-heal. I'm like, yeah, but that means a druid's like break glass in case of bad tank, where they'll off-heal, because that's not the optimal way to play the game is as much damage as possible.
Yeah.
Having emergency buttons in the trunk isn't useful if you can't actually go anywhere. I think that's one of the things where the more you add to a class, especially when it comes to like someone's dead, they come back up, they're good for a couple of minutes to do whatever. That is so obscenely strong that because of the competitive aspect of PvE and PvP that now has a lot of actual real money and like riding on it for a lot of people, that'll just cause balance issues. And that means, I guess the question is, would you be happy as an Unholy DK to do like 5% less damage than Frost if you could do an extra 10% sometimes when you resurrected an ally as a ghoul? That's the kind of trade-off you have to make, and in a competitive world, that's likely never going to be worth it.
Yeah, so that's the design considerations that come in there. And there's a similar question from Sweet Host, who says, instead of a new class, maybe 1 to 2 new specs instead each expansion that add more class fantasy. And you know what? I actually agree with this. And it's the weird thing where the thing that would make it not seem like the thing to do in my head is a thing of fairness, where it's like, oh yeah, whatever's get a 4th spec, but I didn't. I don't feel good about that. But if there is a good idea and it makes sense to put it into the game, then you could totally see something like that where, oh yeah, there's 2 new specs this expansion. Yeah, that'll get a lot of people going to those classes. And I don't know. I guess a whole bunch of my sort of vaguely Eastern themed sort of Blade Master stuff wouldn't exactly fit into the fantasy of a warrior, but I think there's think hard enough about it and you'll almost certainly find stuff there. I mean, you could even just go for Dark Ranger as a hunter new spec that is all like Sylvanas Sea shadowy kicks and flips and stuff. That would kind of work for a hunter, or like a void hunter. That could be another one, though. I mean, you could see how it maybe wouldn't make sense in some regards. Yeah, there could be a whole bunch you could do there.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many immediately come to my head because obviously as a paladin, ever since leveling a little bit in Mists of Pandaria as holy and having a lot of fun just spamming denounce, I'm like, yeah, I would absolutely kill for an Inquisitor paladin range DPS, and not just because it means my paladin could do all 4. But it would just be, you keep Holy Shock, you get something like Denounce, you get something like Exorcism back, So you are actually you're holding your book open and shouting at someone, and it's killing them slowly. Like, that's the kind of thing I think would be super cool. And then, like the ones I talked about earlier, you've got Time Mage, you've got an Earth, like, Tank Shaman. There's so many.
Yeah.
So many.
I mean, screw you and the fellow paladins. The last thing you guys need is an actual Shockedin spec that's also really good.
Yes, please.
Because you guys got it good.
Yes, please.
But broadly speaking, I agree. Give us an Inquisitor, an Earth Shaman tank. Yeah, I don't know. That's cool. A survival hunter.
You okay there?
So that would be sweet. So, yeah, I think there's those issues of fairness that some people might sort of catch and have issues with, but I basically think it would be neat.
Yeah, for sure.
So to continue on the super chat, we've got David again who says thoughts on Venari finally trusts us, takes her mask off, and she's an ethereal. And she recruits us into the eternal war with the brokers and towards the cosmic war that's going on around the cosmos. So I think it's the idea of what happens when Venari finally unmasks and stuff goes on. And right now we have no idea there because the other brokers don't trust her.
No.
She seemingly left her mates for dead in Torghast. Yep. So Venari is spooky. Now, I don't think Venari is an ethereal or anything like that. I think Venari is a broker. I think it's decently clear that they are separate groups. Now, that said, there's bloody obvious similarities, and those similarities have still not been explained by Blizzard. And I don't mean that in some Blizzard, you've not explained your lore. I mean, that's a mystery, and I want to find out where it is, how it goes. Venari's probably the character to take us through that journey.
For sure.
So
100%.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. I wish I could say more about this. It's just Venari, we do not know. Now the idea of the Cosmic War and all of that stuff, it's like I'd love that if it manages to feel like TBC and mysterious instead of us going in our ship and blasting through the galaxy. I really want it to feel like fantasy first, sci-fi second. I love science fiction. I'm rewatching Stargate SG-1 right now. I'm bit through season 5, having a blast. Love Battlestar, blah blah blah. I've got sci-fi cred. If only you lot knew the, game 2.
Yep.
That is something that is highly unlikely for them to see for the next 2 years, but I do believe it'd be pretty awesome if it was after that.
For sure.
So we got sci-fi cred. I love science fiction. I don't want to do any downers in science fiction, but it's like, even think about Stargate, they go through the Stargate, they go to some other world, and in that other world, like, they have a weird, maybe it's like a religious name for what the Stargate is. And it doesn't really feel like science fiction in some ways. I want that feeling of we go through the dark portal and we're in another world. We haven't traveled to another planet, another solar system that is, 7,000 light years in that direction. I don't want it to feel like that. It has to feel like I'm stepping through stepping through the Stargate. I don't understand it. I'm going to a new weird world. I don't want that cosmology stuff to feel like science, to feel like physics. Now, I can geek out and say, whoa, what if, the formation of titans across the universe is actually analogous to, the mapping of, like, the density of matter and dark matter in the cosmic microwave background because, the Big Bang happens then. I don't want to do that. I think that's cool and interesting. I love all that, stuff, but I don't think that's what World of Warcraft should be. So I want to see Cosmos, absolutely, but it's just got to feel, it just can't feel sci-fi to me. It has to feel like that. Just there's something about how they executed on the Burning Crusade and the vibe of going out there.
Yeah, I think they kind of did similar okay with Argus. They leaned a little bit heavy on sci-fi because obviously the Draenei are big crystal spaceships, but at the same time it was still like, whoa, this was the magic keystone that Illidan stole, opened the portal to another world. We went there and killed a big god thing. So it's like that had science fiction roots. TBC was really good for it, and I'm thinking purely Netherstorm. Because all that stuff was super sci-fi, but it was magic crystals. It very much had, like, the entire Draenei have that vibe of this is actually sci-fi, but it's it's almost weird. It's almost like the reverse of the saying that magic is just science we don't understand yet. It's like their science is just magic that we don't understand yet. But then, mages sit down in the crystals and go, oh, it's magic. It's magitech. It's that stuff. I think that's
Yeah. So, take us to the cosmos. I would say let's do a very long pit stop in Azeroth to
please
just give the peoples and the setting of Warcraft what it's due before we go off. So, next question comes in from Unknown Character 14, who says, can we get an updated model of Kalecgos, please? To which I say, there is just about no way we can do an in-depth analysis of that question, but, yeah, Kalecgos is... Dude's looking a bit jank.
bit low poly.
Yeah.
It's
very weird when you see him around any other character. Too.
Yeah, it looks really bad. I think what they could do is, okay. Dragons, I haven't seen them in a while. Their era is over, but is anyone ever really gone? That kind of thing. Where it's just the dragons will eventually come back in some form. They probably will. But
Isles?
What's this? What's this? Islands of Dragons?
Isles? Is there an island that has a dragon? A sort of Dragon Isles? They teased it in BFA. The question is, was it supposed to be patch 8.3? And did they cut it? Because 8.3 was, compared to other things, rather conspicuous in its lack of a big new place to go. So it does make you think. There is another one, final super chat from CW, who says, tie player housing into revamp of original Azeroth. Choose an original zone to settle down in, have the local factions provide distinct rewards, cosmetics, etc. Oh man.
Lordaeron, please.
Oh man. I mean, isn't that it?
Depends on how far you want to go. Do I get to settle down in not Mordor? Desolus. Do I get to settle down in Desolus? I don't know why. I don't know why I'd want to do that, but
it would be hard to do.
Yeah.
I think the way you'd probably have to do it is, find an area of those old zones that would have space where a town maybe double the size of Goldshire or something like that could go. And then that is just the player housing area. And whenever you go in there, it's like a cross-realm thing, but you can select which instance of that housing area you're actually going to. Wouldn't be in every zone. But yeah, if you do that, spread it across the zone, and then you just build in more, rewards, more interactions, local factions, more content there, things to build out your house, maybe, add in construction as a secondary profession. I know that's literally the name of construction in old school RuneScape, but it's cool. So yeah, I would love that. I am a massive supporter for player housing in the game, and the reason why is pretty simple. Look, I know that, okay, I don't want to speak for Gingy and Pilav and, I don't know, very competitive gameplay focused players. I don't want to put words in their mouth. I have a suspicion that they would not be the most interested in that.
Of course not.
So, yeah, for those players, it's not going to be a big boon. But I think there are so many people who, they know of Warcraft, they've experienced it, it's had a place in their life, right? It is a world they've cared about for a long time. Now, if you're going to tell me that, oh yeah, you can build a house in Wildstar's Pandora, I'm just going to say back, well, I don't know Pandora, I've not been there, I don't know that universe. But I think a universe where there's 20 years, there's more than 20 years of content in the Warcraft universe, that is one where players would love to have housing. And then for me, it's just a pretty simple fact of, you open WoW.tools or WoW Model Viewer, you go into any new patch, what do you see? You see building blocks. You see all the different doodads and M2s, all the different models for just little things, tables, fruit bowls. And just the notion that, I could do a bunch of stuff for the Night Elves and I could unlock a bit of the Night Elf kit I don't know why unlocking a Night Elf fruit bowl is cool, but in the same way that you build your house in Valheim, and you make it all real nice and you decorate it the way you want, and it's satisfying. I think World of Warcraft is a universe that people, a world that people care about enough that that's something that I actually would want.
Absolutely, 100%. I just have one question. Where would you want your player house to be?
Oh dear. Why is my head saying Westfall and Azure Mist?
What's wrong with you?
Okay, so I think Azure Mist because it has this really nice, relaxing ambient music.
It does.
But no, I think... Or Stranglethorn, though? Honestly, I'd probably try to have multiple houses.
Of course you would.
Hitting up everything. Oh, man. That stuff would be so good.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I think we do have... I don't think I've missed any super chats. There are 2 more. I just want to double check I've not missed any from before. Oh yeah, Grant Johnson said cross-faction guilds with sanctuary, like a sanctuary guild hall. All I can say to that is, Blizzard always said, and it was one of the defenses of a decision that Blizzard have done that kind of just ticked me off the most, where they said they didn't want to do guild garrisons or, something like that, guild halls, because they wouldn't want people feeling like they couldn't control it if they weren't an officer, and they could reinforce some rough social dynamics. But I already don't have any authority in the guild. My rank is Raider. All that I expect from my guild is that, assuming I do all of the things that are required for me to hold the rank of Raider, that I get an invite to the raid. I have no expectation to change the direction of the guild, to decorate the guild's hall, or anything like that. I mean, it would be nice if we could all, have a chat about that. But it was a terrible justification from Blizz, I think, because it's implicit when you join a guild that you don't have control over those things. Therefore, it is okay for the GM and the officers to be the people who, in-game get to click the buttons to do that. At least I can, in that situation, I could join the guild raid, get ahead of the curve, go back to my guild sanctuary, and see, oh yeah, we've mounted the head of the boss we just killed there. There'd be some camaraderie there. A guild sanctum is not there for the player expression, but it is there to be a totem to the guild's shared achievements, and that's why I would love something like that.
Yeah, no, I absolutely adore in FF14 the house that it's a guild that was 2 of our WoW guildies also play FF, and I joined and I hopped into their house, and it's a little club. I have no control over it. I have no say in it whatsoever, and it's just really nice. I like being there. They're there. I can see their history there. I can see all the bosses they killed together, and I feel like that's an aspirational thing to me walking into that. And then also the getaway with me not having control because there's instance rooms, so I just go to my room and decorate it the way I want. So I have a room in their house, and you can go to other people's rooms, see what they look like. I think that's a very solvable problem, and I think that the benefits of what that would do for guild identity in the long term would vastly outweigh any problems, for sure.
Yeah. And just the sort of thing, you get content to populate that system for free as you make new things. I mean, not literally for free, but, it's like the artists are already making kits for new buildings and stuff like that. I think the only difference would be that, they maybe would have to be made differently and implemented differently from a technical perspective in-game. Grant actually just literally asks, imagine one small house in your Pandaria farm, you can make cosmetic changes to it. It's like... Yeah, even something like that would be like a nice, cozy thing that would elevate the experience of the Pandaria farm. And, even if you brought some of that farming into, maybe it's not player housing, maybe you call it homesteads. Yeah. And, it's something like that. And you can have 1 or 2 of those little features. I think that stuff would absolutely all be really good. To, I guess, finish us off, though, for the night, there is 2 final super chats from David, who, So basically, was talking about TBC and his experience crossing over to Hellfire, and just barely made it to Honor Hold alive. When you get to Honor Hold, playing the little event where the Infernals rain down.
Yeah.
And that's really cool. And, I have a similar experience, which is the first time, I had the identical experience whenever I went there first, but also going into, Howling Fjord for the first time. And, you just have this incredible experience, your little ride in that boat opens up to the perfect vista. The level design. Back then the level design didn't feel like level design. It felt like living, breathing world design.
Yeah.
I think a little bit of that has been lost as our zones have become more like tight, interconnected gameplay hubs. I think that's a discussion for a different day.
Yes, for sure. For sure.
But yeah, it was just like, even in Borean Tundra, and both of those, like the Vrykul are attacking, they got their dragons and stuff. You can actually see them overlooking you at the other side of the fjord.
Yeah.
Or the little inlet. Borean Tundra, you're constantly, the bases of Valence Hold or Vigilant or whatever it was called.
Valence Keep.
Yeah, Keep, that's it. It's constantly under attack by the Nerubians and stuff.
Yes.
I think that stuff's really cool. And I actually think that those are more effective intro experiences than not the intro experience of Warlords of Draenor, but potentially the intro experience of both Legion, Legion, BFA, and this current one, Shadowlands. And there's a reason why I say that. It was purely experiential, and it's just what was happening in the world. And it set the stage pretty clearly in a way where it never yanked control away from my character. It didn't move my camera. It didn't show me a janky in-game cutscene. Now, it's great that Blizzard can get their really big lore moments, but there's just something about being like, you're just a dude in the Alliance, and you've been thrown into this situation, away you go, that I think was very, very effective for setting up the world in just such an elegant way. That's perhaps more elegant than doing a, sort of tightly scripted thing. So, I think there's room for both. I think we should probably have both. I don't know, just a thought.
Yeah, it's the kind of case where I think if you want the player to feel like a hero, they have to perform some heroics. And that was obviously done when you're a soldier and you're like just doing small things. You're an adventurer, you're doing small little heroics. But it's a case where I can't remember the last time an event or like a couple of quests in game made me actually feel like I was doing something great in the context of being the Maw Walker or whatever else. It's like the Maw is just too much. The Maw intro experience is too much of like, okay, here's Bolvar's holding my hand for a bit. Or not Bolvar, Darian. Darian's holding my hand for a bit, and then we're getting lower tidbits here and there. And it felt nice, and it felt oppressive enough, but it wasn't naturally oppressive. It almost might have been better if they'd dropped me in the Maw and told me to get to Venari or to get to the Waystone without any of that scripted stuff. It's just, here you go. Here's these big giants and all these fiery boys that you can't fight yet. Get there.
Yeah, that's almost similar to me, crossing, so many people do this, crossing the river in Elwyn Forest and getting eaten.
Yeah.
In Darkshore, which is pretty sweet. There was a question from Lars. WoW Classic, TBC, Wrath of the Lich King, the ending, or, where does it go after that? I'd say it makes sense to take the WoW Classic project as far as Mists of Pandaria. That will get them many more years of content. After that, the well is ran dry. What are they going to do? I think by that stage, they either need to be giving World of Warcraft Call of Duty tier resources and actually have that work. Or, you need something like a Classic Plus, so an old school RuneScape. And speaking of old school RuneScape, we actually have one from Dastil here as well, who says, do you think WoW can get as old school RuneScape? A 3D game does get much worse with age, in my opinion. Yeah, so, a 3D game can struggle with that, but I would say that the real thing here is compare EverQuest 2 to World of Warcraft, where EQ2, art style-wise, feels a little bit more modern. Or it's not modern, what am I talking about? Photoreal, right? And like it and WoW came out about the same time, but it's like because WoW has way more stylization, WoW just holds up so much better. So I actually do think that World of Warcraft can go the distance, like RuneScape did. They're similarly old games. There was the original RuneScape, which is different from OSRS. You would need old school RuneScape to get the original RuneScape 1, not RuneScape 2. But yeah, WoW can go the distance. Even WoW Classic, I think it will just hold up because, man, the art style worked back then, and goddamn, it still works now. You know?
Yeah, I think as far as like class is concerned, most of the problems I find with old games is there's the fact that they just won't run.
Yeah.
Because architecture changes or OS changes. That's never going to be a problem with them constantly like reviving it easily enough. Art style wise, like you discussed, it doesn't look good, but looks fine.
Yeah.
It looks perfectly fine. Going around, you still get all the nice colors, all the nice shapes. It works perfectly fine. But I think one of the major things that stop people from going back to very old games, especially 3D ones, is because, oh man, from outside of, I guess, like some extremely good platformers and some absolutely, they basically are anachronistic in how well they play 3D games. I mean, Super Mario 64 is one of them. There's so many games just are awful to play because we didn't have the experience as an industry to have all these design problems worked out and all these very simple things. Like, I mean, compare playing any shooter on the PS2, like with a controller, to anything now on a controller. All of the problems with literally input is solved. World of Warcraft Classic feels great to play. Yeah. I actually love playing. I love playing Classic as much as I love playing Shadowlands because it, like, from a feel perspective, because when I hit a button, stuff happens. It works. Yeah. It's instant. So I think that's not a concern for World of Warcraft in any way. It's just a matter of can they keep people interested content-wise.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
There's one final thing. Mm-hmm. So whenever you ask me where my player house would be,
yep,
I was very much thinking only in terms of the vanilla zones.
Yeah.
If we're to expand that, it's Howling Fjord. So there you go. It's Howling Fjord. I love Howling Fjord. It's got the music. It's got the art, the vibe. It's exactly what I want. So there you go. And I think with that done,
yep,
that is the stream. Now, to finish off the stream, if you would like to watch some gaming news, well, we posted a roundup today on the news channel.
Yes, we did.
We do also, by the way, have two other channels. There's the news channel where you get your game industry news. There's some very interesting stories in today's video. Clips. Bellular Clips. You can access that channel. It might be search engine index now, not 100% sure, but you'll be able to find it. Bellular Clips, basically these streams, we take them out, we polish them up, and they go there. So if you have, if you're like Phage Lives here, who says, sorry I was late, yeah, no worries. The Clips channel's got you covered because what will happen is, Connell goes in, he gets all of the, stuff. Rory does his bit with actually, sort of getting all of the stuff to put it up live, and that's where you can get all your quick hits of Warcraft content. And we have so far got, other than the audio issues, very positive reactions there. I think people seem to quite enjoy, getting these like just quick hits of World of Warcraft that are not, not tied to the expectations of a whole big video. Another thing, of course, is if you would like to support us and also get some awesome loot in return that comes from the art team, then you can get your bow pin. It's like a bow and arrow pin this time around for this month, as well as a very cute sticker. It's really nice art. You can check out on the Patreon. And on the Patreon, nothing to announce right now, but suffice to say, it's most of what you and me have been thinking about for the last while. And yes, we will announce things when it is ready to announce, because the last thing I want to do is, sit here and do the big hype man routine thing and, oh yes, my first 100 days plan for the Patreon is, and then, as soon as everyone gets in, don't do it. Don't want to do that.
I mean, do that perfectly fine, just not at 11 o'clock at night on a Friday.
Yeah.
Cheers.
So, there you go. That's it for the stream. I hope you enjoyed today's discussions and, got a good podcasty experience. Yeah. You can, if you miss bits, they'll be up in the Clips channel as well as bits from the past streams.
Yes.
So, I think that's it. I think that's us.
Thank you very much for watching, everyone.
Yeah, cheers. Show 3. We have done it.
Yep, we'll see you, I'm assuming, this time next week.
We will see you next Friday. Yep. Thank you for watching, and we will see you.